What up? Good morning to most, good afternoon to others, and good evening to the viewing audience across the pond. I am your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of this Revolution Podcast. Well, all right. Excited. This is actually the last live stream like this of the year. There's some other shows coming up with some takeovers, if you will, for the year's over. The Antifada podcast is going to be here next week, next Saturday, taking over on the show. I won't be on air. I sadly wasn't able to be here on Thursday to wish my brother in this podcast endeavor a very happy birthday. Let's bring him in. He is the man, the myth, King of Miami, at least on the Haitian side. Maybe not the Dominican side. The Haitian side, he's got it locked fucking down. Not the pro Haitian side, like the Haitian PMC side. He's got it locked down. I'm effing with you. Please welcome my good friend, Pascal Robert. What up?
Peace and greetings to the audience, peace and greetings to the chat, peace and greetings to Jason Miles.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you so much.
It's still your birthday week.
That is true.
56.
We don't need to address that, but yeah.
Not everybody. Look, in the 80s and 90s, they told us that 56 was never going to be a number black people reach. Remember, it was like, if I don't die by the time I'm 18 years old, I just don't know how I'm going to make it out of the ghetto. Ernestine. So you made it to 56.
Fortune.
You don't. So you don't remember any of those?
I remember. Yes, I remember.
You remember all those black tales?
Prognostication.
Which was always funny because they'd be like 20%, 25% was supposed to either be in jail or dead, which means that more won't. But fuck off the more. It was always the 25%. That was the problem. I think that number was a little high. You don't agree? You think that number was right on point?
I don't think that number was on point. I think that number was an exaggeration.
Who made that number up?
I don't know. A Republican.
I feel like it was a Democrat.
Might have been.
I think they were real. Everybody was loving those numbers at the time.
Well, don't forget, it was the era of underclass ideology's popularity. So the mythology of the damaged good, the damaged black person was. Does Dr. Claus share a birthday with me?
Dr. Claus says, happy birthday to my fellow member of the 1219 Club, Pascal. What? Happy birthday, Dr. Claus. Well, all right. I did not know Dr. Claw and you share a birthday. Did you guys? I guess you guys didn't talk about that when we were having our powwow.
No, I didn't know that Dr. Claw.
How was your birthday show, by the way?
It was very good. We had a great conversation. We talked about a variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
Ben showed up. Gene was there. Angela Walker came on.
Whoa.
M. Toussaint tried to come on, but she had some technical difficulties. She couldn't make it on, though she tried.
Damn it. Angela Walker came through. Awesome.
Angela Walker came through. She was great. She was suggesting some good house music. It was pretty awesome.
Did I tell you I found a YouTube channel that is like almost like a behind the music for house stuff?
Really?
House and techno stuff, but from the UK.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me. Still a little under the weather. They did you ever like Goldie?
I think I heard of that group.
Goldie, he's like a kind of a thug ass dude from the UK but he did that song Inner City Life.
I saw that. You said
Inner
that to me.
City Life. I thought I sent that to you.
You did.
Did you watch that?
Yes,
Did you like that?
I did.
So it's a whole series of those little, like maybe 20-minute shorts of different songs within the larger category, I think, of electronic dance music that happens during the 80s and 90s.
Right.
Some of it's been pretty interesting. I watched a few of them. And then, since a lot of house music comes out of Chicago, Chicago's public broadcasting has a whole special. It's called House Music. It started in Chicago.
Amazing.
So we have to do another.
We've done some. I'm actually proud.
Yeah.
Of our house music specials and our analyses of the origins of house music. We've done like 2 or 3 really great shows with some amazing guests on the origins of house music.
I was thinking about that show the other day as I was watching these little vignettes, and there was something that Jeremiah had brought up, and I don't know if it ever really resonated with you the way it resonated with me. He had said that hip hop was the end to a certain kind of black music.
Oh, to many types of black music. Many types of black music.
And I was thinking about it, and I was like, because R&B, remember R&B changes big time. When
make
house
the argument that hip hop is the end of black music that's not hip hop.
Yes, hip hop in orientation, right?
Yeah.
Even with the rise of the Mary J. Bliges
Absolutely.
of the world, and the second iteration of Mariah Carey, right? When Mariah Carey first comes out, she's a very standard pop singer. She really blows up into the stratosphere when there's that hip hop element, and she's got ODB doing hip hop remixes and everything else. And I would love to hear Trevor's take on this too, opinion on this. But does hip hop bring in kind of a minstrelsdom, if you will, of black music to the point where we can't really get back to those more, I don't want to say gospel roots? Because house music is really, a lot of that stuff is rooted in gospel with the vocals.
That's true. Well, I mean, one thing we talk about often is how hip hop replicates the urban class narrative in the music. But one of the things that it also does is that it turns street life into an element of black culture in a way that music has never done before.
And you really see this, and I know you feel this. Middle class black people that have nothing to do with the inner city life, as our good friend Goldie would say, but they embrace it as part of their culture. Feel like they have to embrace it, as some aspect of their culture.
Correct. Would love to hear what Trevor has to say about it.
I would love to hear what Trevor has. Before we bring in Trevor, I want to remind people that there is a series. There's a few things I want to remind people of. The holidays are approaching. It's almost Christmas time. Christmas is Wednesday. I want to remind people that we'll be doing a special stream Wednesday for the Mau Mau Hour. It'll be an all-star cast of foreign policy experts talking about Syria, the fall of Assad, and how we got there. If you enjoy shows like this and you would like to support what we do here on TIR, there's one easy way. You can gift a patron membership. That's right. You can gift a patron membership. It's the best stocking stuffer. It's the best last minute gift. And bam, it's right there on the screen. Scan that QR code. They'll take you right to the screen to gift a patron membership. You already have a patron membership? And you're like, you know what? This is so great. I think someone else should have this. Bam, you can gift it. Gift it to your kids. Since we do wonderful programming for children, you can gift it to the racists in your life just to really piss them off. It's good for all occasions. And also, the latest edition of the Crisis Papers is up. And this is my best cover I've done so far. Bam! Shalimar and Donald Trump. The duo you didn't know you needed. Second time around, Musings on how we got a second Trump term. It's up now wherever you're watching or listening to the show. There's links in the description. And now I will relinquish my host role to the host of the Champagne Sharks. I believe he's the founder as well. Please welcome Trevor.
How's everybody? Yeah, man. It's funny. I could tell y'all been working together for a while because Jason be doing these jokes and I'm laughing, and Pascal just be deadpanning like, yeah, I heard this. I heard this before. You sit there. Like I'm here cracking up, and Pascal's like, yeah, it's another Tuesday or Saturday, Sunday, whatever.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. It works better that way, because if Pascal was like Ed McMahon,
Yeah,
the jokes wouldn't be as funny. Right?
No, it does work. Like Pascal's like a good straight, but Pascal's funny too. But Pascal's very deadpan humor, so it takes you like a second to register like it was a joke, because he says it in the same tone that he says everything else, and you realize like it's very like a dry humor. Like I think I'm closer to a dry humor, but it's just funny to watch the good chemistry you guys have.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
I do want to remind people that we are closing in on year number 5 of this show. 4 years of us working together, Pascal.
That's correct.
So it's a lot of changes coming up for the new year. I think we're moving into a studio, as I'm having insane issues with internet connections here on this part of Mexico. But no, I'm excited for the new year. Trevor, I do want to ask you, as Pascal and I are talking about colored folks, you've been colored for a minute now. Hip hop, does its rise in the 90s put a death nail in the coffin for certain forms of Black music? Black American music.
I don't think it did until sampling was kind of dead, because when I was coming up listening to hip hop, it actually, to me, kept a lot of music alive, because people used to like to crate dig and find different things. So there's a lot of old music that I probably wouldn't have been as into if not for hip hop. Like we used to go raid vinyl shows and they used to have really good beats, because especially when they were doing it like illegally, when they didn't want to clear the samples. So you had to try to be very creative with the beats, or put like 10 beats in the song and try to camouflage it. And when it got more expensive to sample, it's like, hey, we're gonna sample one song, and since we're paying so much for it, we're gonna use all of the song. But even then, you still found good songs. But now I notice after a certain time when sampling died, I feel like, or there's less of it, I feel like modern hip hop fans are very musically ignorant. Like they don't know about any Black music that came before hip hop. They barely even know about old hip hop, So but a lot of the old music that I'm into, I found like Low End Theory by Tribe Called Quest got me into a whole bunch of jazz that I ended up finding out about. I found out about Donald Byrd through hip hop. I found a lot of old music through hip hop, and we used to have like forums where we compete to find different samples, and like only a few years ago, people discovered that Shook Ones Part 2 was sampled from Herbie Hancock, because Havoc disguised it so well. It took like decades for people to find that one.
That's one aspect of hip hop that I appreciated, but I think that's also for a big time music aficionado to go look that up.
But I think it created music aficionados. Like
yeah,
I wasn't one until.
Were you a musician growing up?
Not really. I mean, I played piano and flute, but I never got really good at either of them.
I mean, I'm not good at guitar, and I played it all over the world. So, I asked that question because if you've played an instrument and you're a bit of an aficionado of the instrument, I think you are more inclined to want to know where those samples come from. Or if you grew up, like, I don't know if you and Pascal grew up in a home where your parents played that kind of music. My parents didn't play any sort of cool jazz. That was all stuff, to your point, I searched out on my own, going back in the crates, if you will, and finding like old Miles Davis stuff because it was so cheap. at one point in time.
I want to ask Pascal something. Did your parents play Spanish music when you were growing up, or?
Not. My parents played mostly Haitian music, classical music, and that was it. Mostly, I had an aunt who played a lot of African American '70s R&B music, but my parents played mostly Haitian compa music and classical. My dad played most of the music in the house. He played classical music on Sundays, then he would play Haitian compa music throughout most of the day, but they did not play a lot of jazz. My aunt played a lot of '70s R&B and some disco music. But I got access to, I learned about jazz really more so in law school in the 90s in Boston, because Boston is a really great jazz city. Because
Was it from all your Spike Lee movies you watched?
I watched a lot of Spike Lee movies and I did like the jazz in it, but in terms of becoming an aficionado, going to see jazz performances and researching jazz artists and their music, learning on who Coltrane was, who Miles was, that happened because you have the there's a music school in Boston. I forgot the name of the actual
Berkeley.
School. Berkeley College of Music is there, and you have a lot of jazz musicians. And plus, there was a jazz club, jazz club I used to go to called Wally's Cafe, and they have live jazz every night of the week. So I became really into jazz as a result of living in Boston.
But even the jazz that's popular in the 90s, in the early 90s, you do have movies like Mo Better Blues. It almost feels like there's this bit of an explosion of blackness in the first part of the 90s and the late 80s, especially with the rise of Spike Lee. But even that stuff feels like hip hop is still, excuse me, in its DNA, because it has to be for it to be taken seriously in a contemporary sense. Do you agree with that?
It's all in the context of a certain kind of petite bourgeois black nationalism, man. It's kind of like we, us as a people, we claim our culture. It's about a kind of certain cultural. We got album, we got vinyl being pulled out here.
Yeah, I have my vinyl's behind me. After my dad died, I took his music collection. So it's like my dad listened to a bunch of stuff. Like, I mean, there's
what
stuff.
Is that? I can't do this. It's backwards.
Oh yeah, it's an evening with Alfredo, and it's like he's had stuff. I'm like, where did you find it? He had a very eclectic. So he'd have this, but then he'd have
songs in the key of life.
Songs in the Key of Life.
Wow, great record.
Then he had Spanish music, like, so this one is actually, I think, Haitian. Actually, this is old compa. But yeah, he had a bunch of stuff. It's like, so I have all types of. So I did grow up with a lot of.
Is that an accordion?
Yeah, it looks like an accordion. Like, because he was older. He was born in the 30s. My dad, so he had a lot of interesting. But something interesting with my dad was he had a lot of Spanish music, salsa,
right,
Cuban son, because he said when he was growing up, Haiti didn't have a mature music industry yet. So
your dad was alive to see the birth of compa music.
Yeah, exactly. And they used to import all the Spanish music from the Caribbean, like Cuba, Puerto Rico, whatever. They would all bring it over there. So I had African American music, Haitian compa, and zouk as well. And then there was a whole bunch of Latin music, like all the early salsa, all the New York salsa, Cuban son. So I think, to go back to what you were saying, Jason, I think I had a musical ear probably for my dad's music, because he had a lot of music. He also read a lot, so I think that's probably where I got my reading too.
That goes into, like, if a person, to me, is gonna go and try to figure out where the music is coming from, and oh, that's a cool sound. Oh, it's sampled, because but this is also back in the era of us reading liner notes in albums, so you could find out where certain samples were taken from. in certain songs, and then when you hear the actual song and see how they use it, you know who's actually really good with samples that is very underrated as a producer is Shock G from Digital Underground.
Oh yeah.
Have
you ever seen Shock G describe different
yes
MC's cadences?
yes
He's really intellectual. I was really impressed. That was
super. He's from the East Coast actually. He was not born in California.
that I did not know.
Forget where in the East.
He
Either
died,
Jersey
right?
or New York.
Yeah, he died during the
2 years
pandemic, I
ago.
think.
Yeah. Very sad because he Digital Underground, I think, is forgotten by a lot of people outside of the Bay Area for how important they were in hip hop, with sampling, with introducing us to people like Tupac.
He did.
Just being real creative, even those early Tupac records. Shock G did
Afrocentric Tupac.
Yeah.
A very different Tupac. Like, listen to So Many Tears. That is That Girl by Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
And we kept listening. I was like, how did he do it? Like, he played it backwards, and it's this weird filter he puts on it. But if you listen to it, you can kind of hear it, and it's slowed down. But
yeah,
no,
there's two notes where it really jumps out, but outside of those two notes, it's hard to detect.
Super hard to detect. And that's what makes sampling real interesting, especially with the guys that did it early with the sampling machines that didn't give you a long sample time.
Yeah.
So the layering that you're talking about, that was so important to kind of taking hip hop into its golden era.
And they were skirting legality too. So that in addition to like the mechanical limitations of the sampler, you didn't want the sample too long because you were kind of trying to pull a fast one because you weren't paying for it. It's like Prince Paul, like that De La Soul first album would be prohibitively expensive to do legally because Prince Paul put like 5-6 samples in one song, and a lot of like you pay for samples two ways. You either pay by how much you sample, or you pay a flat fee. But if I remember correctly, I think most of it moved towards flat fee. So if you're gonna have to pay a flat fee for a sample, you might as well just use everything you can get from the sample. And if you want to do 5 little parts of a song into one song, if you're doing a flat fee, you gotta pay full price for each one. So it's like it becomes expensive as 5 songs. As you know, it's easier to do one sampled song per song that you're making it with. So I think that kind of ruined it a lot too. Like the kind of collage work that they used to do in the early days of sampling, kind of.
Again, that's how we get the golden era of hip hop. I think hip hop, just looking back at that era, doing all the music shows that we've been doing on the show, and I would love to invite you if you're down to come on to one of the music shows.
Oh yeah, I love talking music.
We look at an entire year of music, and not by genre and not by artist, but an entire year, and go through. I make a playlist of every album I can find that year, and it's globally. So there's crazy Brazilian records, and that's where I found out about Japanese city disco, whatever they call it.
Yeah, that stuff. I only found it out last year. It's really
that stuff is all. Pascal would love it.
It has a resurgence. For some reason, a lot of young kids are into it, like millennials and younger. They love it.
I'm all about it. I didn't find it till doing these playlists, because I found a list of a journalist wrote this list of the 15 greatest years of music, and my fellow musician and I, Conan Neutron, we go down this list, and I think it's like 15 years, and now we're in the 70s, the early 70s. But in going through that list, 84 was one of the years, and that for me is a year where hip hop has to be taken seriously, even though there's not too many hip hop records. But there's a demarcating line, I believe, that's drawn between Run DMC and the Fat Boys. And Run DMC definitely does not want to be the Fat Boys. They don't want to be a joke. And that self-titled record is very serious, but it's limited sonically.
I was just thinking about the Fat Boys. The Fat Boys kind of became a joke, but in the beginning they were taken very seriously. They just kind of let themselves become more of a novelty act. But do you know the movie Crush Groove?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean the Fat Boys and the Fat Boys are up there with Run DMC, LL Cool J, Curtis Blow, and everyone else. And like they used to be taken seriously as
The Disco 3.
yeah, yeah. These used to be taken seriously. I think it was around the time that they started doing like Chubby Checker and the Twist and all these other and in fact, I actually have one of the Fat Boy novelty vinyls. Like it's them with Chubby Checker doing a Twist remix. They started doing Police Academy soundtracks and
Yeah.
it
Well, that's
started
where the money is. Thank you.
yeah.
It says Disorderlies.
Yeah, and it totally kind of ruined their legacy because now people think of them as a. I mean, they were always a little bit of a novelty act, but they were like that guy was a really good beatboxer, Buff, and they rapped well. They were.
Remember they
were,
lost weight. A few of them lost weight too.
Yeah, which I think ruins the gimmick too.
Look, you're called the Fat Boys, and then the guy loses the weight. I get it. Rap is a new thing. People are gonna throw money at you. You're not making. I tell this to people all the time on the show. Say it again. I don't care if your first album is a hit. You're not making any money because it costs money to make that first record.
Yeah.
And if you went on tour back in the days when you got tour support, people are going to need that money back. Those lighting rigs aren't cheap. That crew isn't free.
And back then they weren't using lawyers to sign the contracts, so a lot of them signed fucked up contracts. Like when they talk about their old contracts, like but they didn't think it was going to be that big, so they didn't expect to have a lot of money to steal. But what
are you saying, Pascal?
They call those recoups, right? When you got to recoup the money.
Yeah.
You gotta recoup that investment, if you will. And I've only heard a few artists actually be like somewhat honest about their recoupment and the investment, because this is an industry built around tastemakers, and you just can't get your music in the hands of just anybody. Like somebody's got to co-sign you, and that's kind of a big thing that labels do. They say, well, this is a legitimate artist. And this is also back in the early days. This is back when there was a thing called artist development, and you didn't even come out until you were polished.
And you were given time to find an audience. Like a lot of big groups, they flopped once or twice before they really broke through. Now, I think there's no patience for that. People want you, first off, to bring your own audience.
Bring your own audience.
Yeah. They want you to have some kind of viral online presence already before they even entertain you. And they won't have patience if it doesn't work out.
No. And yeah, I just thinking about the early days of hip hop and how that music was looked at as this passing fad. Rodney Dangerfield has Rappin' Rodney. There's all these kind of joke records, and then you have Run DMC's first album when people are making tons of singles in the early 80s, if you're recording anything. And then 86, the door is kind of blown open with Raising Hell.
One thing that was weird, though, was like the novelty records were still kind of a serious part of hip hop. Because like I grew up with a lot of older cousins and had an older sister who was like 7 years older than me and everything. So I used to be exposed to like the parties and stuff. And it was interesting. Like they would play the Rappin' Duke in the same party that they would. And there was another song called the Pee Wee Herman. They would play like the
brand new dance called the Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah, and that would be mixed into a party with Curtis Blow and LL Cool J, and it was kind of interchangeable where it was a novelty record, but it still was considered part of the culture, and it was still part of the party music. It was a very interesting time that because it was really like before it became like I think what people thought of as ghetto music, which I guess you can argue it was really mostly like party music. It was just about dancing to, and then it kind of became, I think especially with the rise of gangster rap, it really started becoming about.
Does it become ghetto music though, in a way to market it as this legitimate thing coming out of a different part of New York? Because what's interesting to me about the rise of hip hop is when you hear white people talk about it. And I watched this real interesting little short documentary. There's a guy that has a very good music show called Band Splaining.
It's a great name for her.
It's a good show too. And he did a show on a song that I know you guys know. Watch the Closing Doors by the IRT. Watch the Closing Doors, that old school hip hop song where they're rapping about riding on the train. And
that one I personally don't remember. Maybe if I hear it, it'll ring a bell.
I wish I could play it, but you know, they'll take the show down. But you know that song, Pascal, don't you?
I'm sure if I heard it, I would know it.
I mean, it came out in like 83.
Yeah,
What'd you say?
You know the group who sings it?
They're called IRT. Inner Borough Rhythm Team. And they were white musicians. One lady worked for the label. She was a label. She ended up being a big time label executive. And the other guy was a musician. He was a studio musician. He was the one white studio musician in the 70s when there was a bunch of black studio musicians in New York. And him and this lady had heard hip hop for the first time. And they were like, there's this new thing coming from Uptown. And it's gonna be great. And we need to figure out how to do it. And they were trying to write a rap song. And they hired this producer who worked in dance music. And so he kind of danced up their song to make it more danceable. And the lady found a rapper randomly making copies at a copy place for the lyrics of the song.
Yeah, a lot of old hip hop classics kind of started like that. Like even like Sugar Hill Gang, which is considered like a staple song.
First, yeah.
Yeah, even that was considered to be like an outsider record at the time. Like the person that owned Sugar Hill Records, which I think was primarily doing like disco.
Sylvia Robbins.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. That is her name. You're absolutely right. I blanked on it. She kind of wanted to hop in on this hip hop trend too, and those rappers she got, like Big Bang Hangin, those guys, supposedly the controversy was like they weren't really centered in the culture, and they kind of just took things from other rappers, and they were kind of like
they were the in vogue of hip hop. They were a contrived group.
Exactly. They were a studio created group, to cash in on the trend, but it became a staple of hip hop.
I'll find that Watch the Closing Doors song for you guys, and I'll put it in the private chat. You found it? It's a dude, I'm telling you, it's a great little song that for you, Pascal, will probably bring you back to being a little kid breakdancing on the subway for lunch money.
Here's something I want to bring up to you guys. I think was a conversation I was having with someone earlier this week, and I want to see what you guys think. Is that a lot of black people, especially back in the day, we didn't really understand working class. Like you were either ghetto or middle class. Like we would call a lot of things. Like I was talking with someone how I thought I grew up middle class, but as I got older, I realized I was working class. And
poor.
Yeah, poor, working class poor. Yeah, but it was like if you had two parents in the house, people would think like that was middle class. If you had two parents or like whatever. So I found this YouTube where they found all the old heads, all the old Black Spades gang members who were part of the founding of hip hop, a lot of the old rappers and DJs from like the 70s, and they were calling Cool Herc and 1520 Sedgwick, the building that's
the
credited with the first hip, they were calling it middle class. And I'm like, okay, I know the area of the Bronx, especially back then, that was a working class area. But to them, if you weren't like on Section 8 and you had two parents, you were middle class. So like, you had like a dad that was like a postal worker, a garbage man, and he had like a good job, what they call a good job. And your mom was like maybe a teacher or a nurse. Like, you might be in the South Bronx, but that area and that part was considered, to them, to this day, they still call it middle class. I'm like, well, that's not middle class. I think it's interesting. I don't know if you guys had the same experience, that a lot of Black people don't really understand the nuances of working class. Like, it's very kind of binary, where it's like, okay, I'm poor.
Mm.
I'm not collecting Section 8 or whatever, but I got to make choices every paycheck. I'm living check to check. My kids are going to school or whatever, and I can buy them some clothes and everything. I can get them a pair of Jordans if they really want it, but I can't just spend indiscriminately. I have to worry about making ends meet. So it was interesting to hear them even back then complaining about Kool Herc as a middle class interloper, where I'm like, no, he's not that much better than you in the grand scheme of things, economically. But to them, he seemed like he was so far above. And I think, like, the idea of the working class roots of hip hop doesn't really get discussed because of this revisionism, whereas it was just the absolute blight, poorest of the poor that was doing it.
I think you're on a show of fellow travelers here today, because we love discussing the fact, especially my comrade in arms, Pascal Robert, the middle class and working class roots of hip hop. Because there's one thing I hate more than anything, is the origin story of hip hop is it only started because all them niggas stole shit during the blackout.
Yeah.
And it's like, word, every single Black person in New York stole equipment and they learned how to use it like that. And that, like, I don't buy it. Just don't buy it.
Yeah, and a lot of the icons of hip hop grew up in 2-parent households, went to college. Russell Simmons, he was grew up in a house in Queens, and working class parents. And
you
everything.
could rap about it at one point in time. You could rap about your parents. You could rap about going to school. These weren't things looked down upon until a narrative has to be built around the music that I think exists to a certain extent. I don't think everybody that's involved in the music, everyone that's dancing, everyone that's doing graffiti, not everybody that's doing it is coming from working or even middle class. Some people are really fucking poor.
Yeah.
But to think that this is going to be your way out is also extremely foolish, because there is no precedent set where you're going, I'm going to be the world's greatest graffiti artist and make $1 billion trillion, because no one's seen that happen yet. Basquiat comes from decent beginnings and doesn't go the quote unquote graffiti route. It's pop art. And is he really part of the hip hop scene, or is he more part of the
downtown art scene?
Yeah. Right. The punk art scene, which hip hop has not a toe in, but a foot in the 80s.
Yeah, because the downtown people discovered hip hop and started bringing it downtown. So there's this weird moment of time where it goes from, like, the disco fever in places like in the Bronx and Harlem, and it starts moving downtown to, like, around where Lower East Side CBGB's is. That's where that weird cross pollination happened with Fab Five Freddy hanging out with Debbie Harry and then Malcolm McLaurin, like the guy who founded the Sex Pistols. He was working downtown. He discovered hip hop and punk through being downtown. He did Buffalo Girls, which was considered like a popular hip hop song, and then he took punk and brought that to. So there's an interesting cross pollination happening there.
I told you I went up to Biz Marquee once because I used to work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I worked on. It's not like I just knew him. I knew him because I worked on a kids TV show that he worked on called Yo Gabba Gabba. But he was, rest in peace to one of the nicest, greatest people ever, a hip hop historian, and him and Cool V would just go off all the time in the dining room about hip hop. What was the second vinyl ever? And I remember I went up to Biz. I was like, Biz, did you know Debbie Harry? And he looked at me.
Show.
He goes, who? And
wow.
I said, Debbie Harry. He goes, I said, Fat Five Freddy. Don't you know Fat Five Freddy? He's like, oh, he's like, talking about the people Freddy knew. And then V kind of like talks to Biz, and he's like, yeah, Freddie. And he's like, Freddie, man, that nigga hung out with them other people.
Yeah,
Hanging out with Freddie and them people like that.
that sounds right. Yeah, because he pretty much brought
Yeah,
it to them basically. Yeah,
Well,
which is
Fat Five Freddy was really, he was more than simply an urban hip hopper. He was an arts. He was one of those guys that you find in art school. Like, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? He was a man of he was an inner city tastemaker
yeah,
of the old genre. You know what I'm saying? Like, he would be going to, like, all of those different, like, kind of like dinner parties in upper West Side. He'd be with Debbie Harry. He'd be in the music industry. He'd also be with the hip hop tastemakers and whatnot. But his street bona fides and credibility was never questioned.
yeah,
But
yeah. Isn't he in Wild Style? Like, and that's
Yeah.
when it was authentic things out there. Yeah,
But he's an early tastemaker in terms of
Mhm.
really what's going on in terms of street music and culture. So he becomes a curator in terms of the direction of the music early on, and introduces it into certain spaces in society where it wouldn't be before. And there's that early fusion between hip hop and punk that's very real, that the Beastie Boys come out of, that, you have Rick Rubin comes out of that as well. So these mergings are very, very important to the early development of the music. And I think it should be celebrated, man. I'm not one of these people who have this kind of like narrow racialized notion that hip hop is this music that grew up in an urban black vacuum that was devoid of other influences. That's fundamentally untrue.
yeah. And I think it could only really happen in a place like New York that doesn't have car culture and where people are kind of forced to be in similar spaces. Like when I went to Chicago, I was shocked at how segregated Chicago was, and it's like,
And you're from New York? Can you say that?
well, yeah, because Chicago is more segregated than New York, because New York people might live, especially now with gentrification, people might live very different places, but you still have a lot of shared space, because, for example, with gentrification, even the housing projects, when things gentrify around the housing project, the projects stay the same. So you still see black people, even in a nice part.
Also, you have to admit, in New York, you guys have Spanish black people.
Yeah,
That is very like there's real Mexicans in Chicago that have been there for a long time.
yeah,
And it's very different. I'm from California. It's very different when you go to New York and you see all these people with hair way nappier than mine.
yeah,
speaking
yeah,
Spanish.
totally. And but like even riding on a train, like, okay, I'll give a perfect example, right? I was um I was in Chicago and we were on the train there, and we hit this stop called River North, which I guess is the last white stop on the train. And literally, um, every white person got off. It was just me and a bunch of white people. Every white person got off, and this is where I was supposed to get off because that's where the hotel was. But I missed the stop. Nothing but black people came on, and then it continued, and the next two stops were just all black people. I've never seen anything like that. Even though like New York segregated, you're still gonna see in Times Square a cross section. There's like some place where they're like mixing together. On the train, you can see businessmen and like
Okay.
black kids, and like Chicago. I just find it very interesting. Like walking around, there just wasn't a lot of, I felt, shared presence. Even if you guys aren't doing the same thing or you're there for the same purpose, at least just being around each other. I just didn't really see that much of it. I never seen a train just go from all white to all black in a single stop in New York. It's
What do you say to that, Pascal? Because you've been in
That is
Chicago.
true. It's just more the nature of the mass transit in New York requires more people to actually interact in spaces in ways that they wouldn't in other cities. I've been to Chicago as well, and it is very segregated in a way that I didn't find New York also. But Chicago has a very tortured racial history in a way. New York has a tortured racial history also, particularly in the 80s and the early 90s, is very, very violent. But Chicago, it's a different kind of, like, there's a different kind of just contempt, racial contempt out there that's just
Yeah.
It is very different in Chicago.
I read a biography of Richard Daley, like the first one, and it was really eye-opening. Martin Luther King straight up said that when he had to march in Chicago, he said it was worse than the Deep South. He said it was the worst thing he ever experienced.
Well, you're only what, barely 20 years out of World War II, and you have these white fascists. That's where the white neo-Nazi movement comes out of, like Skokie, which is right outside of Chicago. So imagine how insane that is when you're still dealing with the Cold War and tons of American nationalism, that you have freaking open fascist Zig Heiling. That's gotta F with you. Gotta F.
No, I mean, Dick King did say when he went to Cicero, he said he never experienced racism like that before in his life compared to what he saw in the South. But I've always said that Northeastern white ethnic racism is a different kind of racism than what you get in the South, man.
I want to ask you guys something. I saw this stat that I thought ranked true, and I was wondering what you guys think. But it was talking about how being black working class and black middle class gives you a proximity to black poverty that white middle class and white working class doesn't have to
embrace.
White poverty, as in, like, because of white flight and all this stuff that like black middle class people, black working class people always kind of had to be around black lower class people, because with the white flight, eventually your neighbors or people in your neighborhood, a lot of really poor people would end up moving in because there wasn't enough black working or middle class in a lot of these areas to have I mean, it does happen, but it wasn't always easy to have a full black middle class or a full black working class area.
I would actually challenge that by saying, well, what about black middle class gentrification in and of itself? When they gentrify spaces and push poor and working class black people out, you know what I'm saying?
No, I'm talking about in the hip hop days.
In the 80s.
Yeah, in the 80s. I should have been more clear.
Well, I lived in the neighborhood I grew up in. Queens was an area in Jamaica, Queens called Cambria Heights. It was considered by some people to be an upper middle class neighborhood. As a matter of fact, I mean, it was a middle. It was a middle of the. It was more of a working middle class neighborhood by most standards. People owned their homes, they had a car and whatnot. But at the same time, it was a black neighborhood. It was almost a majority black neighborhood. There was never a time I felt that neighborhood was inundated with really urban poverty at all. There was always an ample number of middle class to working class blacks who would come in and fill in the housing spaces. So to say that, I think when you say there's a proximity to poverty, I think that what that statistic is those statistics are talking about is that class in black spaces are always more fluid, because we have fewer blacks that are in the middle and upper middle classes, and there's always a more proximity to the black poor and the black working poor amongst black folks than they are amongst white people, because they can be in black families. They are closer than they are for our white brethren.
I think something that's also different about places like St. Albans and Cambria Heights, because I spent some time growing up around there as well, is there's less population density. So I think it makes it a little bit easier to have a more homogenous black neighborhood. But in places like in Brooklyn, the Bronx, where first off, there's all these housing projects, but then there's just these big buildings. Like, I think it becomes harder to fill that much housing space with black middle class and working class people without other races to help fill it out. Because I did notice that when we moved from Queens in a diverse working class neighborhood that actually had a mix of races to Elmont, which was next door to St. Albans. I remember, and it's Cambria Heights. I remember being struck by, oh wow, like a whole neighborhood full of middle class black people. I remember finding it very novel and inspiring. I used to really like I didn't take it for granted when I saw it. I was really impressed by it. But when I grew up in Queens, or spent time like in Brooklyn and Manhattan, I didn't really see that. I just always thought if you live in an all black neighborhood, there was just gonna be a certain chunk of poverty in there.
Interesting. Well, I know Elmont very well, and it's very similar to the kind of environment that I grew up in.
Yeah. And there's a part of Elmont called Black Elmont, but not all of Elmont is pretty much Black Elmont.
Right.
So.
When I was coming up, when I was a little kid, Elmont was very white.
Yeah, Elmont was very white, and there was one part of Elmont that was called Black Elmont, and now Elmont just looks just like Cambria Heights or St. Albans. Like it wouldn't even make sense if you told someone there was a part called Black Elmont, because they wouldn't know what you're talking about. It all looks the same.
Rosedale used to be all white Italians. As a matter of fact, there's a videotape about Rosedale in the early 70s about how like the Italian kids are antagonizing black kids moving in, treating them with using the N words. It's kind of traumatizing, because I'm old enough to remember when that kind of happened.
Trevor, I don't want to derail this conversation, but originally you didn't come on here to talk about black music or hip hop. I know there's things you wanted to discuss. We can bring those things up, or we can stay on.
Thank you, because I could talk about this. I mean, I'm down to talk about this if there's more you guys want to talk about. I don't really have much more to
look,
but all this is one straight statement to get me back on the tangent.
I think all this stuff I think it all is in the same ballpark. I think, especially where we're going on now with how we feel about the early days of rap music and how it was viewed, where it really comes out of. I do wonder, do you think, kind of to what you wanted to originally talk about, do you think in this second iteration of Trump, as we're talking about something like culture and hip hop, and you guys come from a place that we'll call it a melting pot. I think New York is highly segregated compared to where I'm from.
Oh, it is compared to where you're from. It is.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I'm from a if you could, I went to see my young son, who goes to a wonderful school that his mom put him in. My son is of mixed ethnicity. He is Filipino and black. And he goes to a school filled with beige children. And it just looked like every big time ad campaign you've ever seen. Just the most professional looking black people with the most professional looking other, or others marrying others, so you have super other children. It's just, I walked in to the auditorium where they were having it, and he goes to school in a college, which is even more cool, right? And it's just this beautiful presentation. My eyes are watering as he walks onto the stage. And all I can think to myself, Pascal, is this is the DEI dream come to life. All these well-to-do bougie Negroes the kids doing presentations about identity and acceptance. And I'm like, oof.
Well, enjoy while you can, because Trump and his boys are going to
look, there's a stronghold here in the Bay Area, there in the Bay Area, that they cannot yet crack. They want to crack, and they're doing a very good job in Southern California. It hasn't weaseled its way up north all the way yet. I talk about it in my latest piece in the Crisis Papers. Please check that out. But
it's weird with New York though, because it's like it's gotten more segregated and less segregated in weird ways. Because I feel like people don't really think about class segregation, and I think especially with class lines, it's got like, okay, if you are upper middle class, you can pretty much live anywhere you want in New York, and you get these kind of diverse spaces, but the homogeny of thought and money is very shit lib, upper middle class, went to a good school. We're all staunch Democrat type of. It's very weird. Like when I grew up in Flushing in the '80s, it was very mixed in a way like how you would describe the Bay Area, right? I mean, we had Italian people, Hispanic people, black people.
But were you allowed to fuck them? That's the whole thing.
That's a good question.
You can live next to me, but can we go out? And that's what I'm talking about. I'm from somewhere where you can totally be like, oh, we live next to Laotian people, and we can totally fuck them.
See, that's weird because it's like you could, but your parents wouldn't be happy about it. Yeah. So it's like you would kind of like do it like on the down low, basically.
Oh no. I wish I could show you pictures.
Mixed race dating didn't become cool in New York until the millennium.
Yeah.
What?
I would think so. Yeah.
You're lying.
But you could be friends with people, and you would hang out with people and everything. But
time out. I gotta ask both of you Negroids this question. You gonna tell me all these big assed Puerto Rican women?
That's not
clapping all around you.
No. Black people have a weird thing in New York, which is where the whole N-word problem has started. Where Puerto Rican, Dominican people were treated as kind of honorary black, and that's why a lot of black people let them say the N-word willy-nilly. And then other regions are like, "What are y'all doing?" And people get mad at black people in New York for just giving away the N-word passes left and right. But we didn't really think of Puerto Rican people, Dominican people as that different than us. The way like black and Hispanic is very separate in other parts of America.
That is insane to me.
So
hot Korean woman walks by in your neighborhood. Oh, Korean family lives down the street. Hot Korean woman, you can't say shit.
Oh nah, man. That's
really?
Yeah. When Flushing was very diverse, but when the Korean people came in, they were seen as almost like aliens. Like that was the one thing everyone agreed on was like, what's with all these Korean people? And then they basically gentrified. What's really interesting about Flushing, right? Which Koreans are thought of and Asians thought of as a model minority. The Asians were thought of as bringing crime. The Asians that came in were all in gangs. There were all these Korean gangs. If you go, you go on YouTube and look, or if you just search on the internet, look at Korean gangs, Flushing, whatever. Like they became a quality of life issue. I remember there was like the White Tigers and all these different gang names, and they would have shootouts in the streets. They'd be like fighting each other. Chinese gang members who got exiled from Chinatown gangs all relocated in Flushing. Then the Chinese gangs fought with the Korean gangs, and I swear to God, people don't believe when I say this, but like there are black and Latino people who are like, yo, I need to move to the suburbs where it's safe and get away from these Asians. These Asians are just
we had similar problems where I'm from in Richmond, California, because we got war-torn Asians. So if you escaped a genocide by throwing a distant family member on a landmine or something, then for whatever reason you got asylum in my neighborhood. So we had lots of Laotians and Cambodians, and they ended up forming Mien people. They ended up forming gangs as well that were like super violent, but you could still fuck them. So there's that.
That's the ultimate test of Jason. Can you fuck the Asian women? That's basically what I mean.
Well, I'm sad you guys, all these fucking like Brazilian women walking around with huge fat asses, and you guys can't do it because rule book says no.
Yeah, I feel like Hispanics and blacks was like semi-interracial dating in New York. Like it wasn't considered totally same race dating, but it wasn't fully seen as interracial. Like growing up, black and Hispanic people dated all the time. I remember growing up, and nobody really cared. But at the same time, we were letting them say the N-word, so it was like.
So if you could say the N-word, but you couldn't go to prom with
No, you could. I mean, I know people who were like in full-fledged relationships with Hispanic people, and
that was not a problem. That wasn't the problem. I'm talking about trying to date the Asians, the Koreans, the
white people. Yeah, exactly.
Dusty says you're allowed to make Ice Spice. What is she? A mix with?
Dominican
and Nigerian.
No way. Ice Spice is Dominican and Nigerian?
Yeah, if you look at her, once you know she's Nigerian, when you look at her face, she's got an extremely Nigerian face. Just imagine it darker. She's got, like, once it's called out, it jumps out at you. She's got a very Nigerian.
Now, can you fuck Africans?
That's a great question.
Got quiet on that too. You can't even fuck Africans. New York sucks.
No. Well, first off, like I said, you could. Here's something. You could fuck Latinos, but also Filipinos for some reason. We're not fully considered Asian. For some reason, I remember a lot of people in Black and Filipino couples was a very big thing growing up. But like, you wouldn't normally say like a Black person, a Chinese person. You know what's very interesting to me? I don't know if you had this experience, Pascal. Caribbean Indian people, I feel like we're harder to date than a Latino person. That's
a rough market right there, bro.
Yeah. Even though these people came from Black countries,
Indians, Trinidad Indians,
even though these people came from Black countries like Trinidad or Guyana, they had a very closed dating circle, which I think happens to this day. Like, it was way more common to see a Black person dating a Dominican or a Puerto Rican or a Filipino person than was to see a Black person dating a Guyanese Indian. Like this, I never saw that. Or a Trinidadian Indian, yeah. That was extremely hard nut to crack. No pun intended.
Dude, I'm so sorry that you guys grew up in such a horrible place. I'm so sorry. You see, Pascal left New York to go to college and never went back.
Oh, well, I did my undergrad in New York. I went to Hofstra undergrad. I went to law school in Boston. So, I mean, but the thing is, by the time I went to college, there was more. It got better towards close to the 90s. The 90s started to open up a little bit, but really, in the 80s, man, it was not. I tell you what, it didn't get the cross racial pollination didn't get serious till like the late 90s and millennials in New York.
Do you see what this dude Andrew Robles wrote? This nigga said Filipinos were darker, spoke Spanish, and worked at the post office. Basically, the Mexican Asians. God damn. Just to let you know, none of my former in-laws work at the post office. Take that, Andrew.
Jason knows about the Philippines. Jason knows.
You know what? I was married for a long time, so quit acting like all those kids are from different.
All your kids are Filipino.
I was married to one woman for 10 years and had 3 children.
And you got
yes, all of my kids, yeah. Jesus. I was married for a long time. You act like I was fucking every Filipino that would walk by. That would be a Herculean task. Considering where I'm from.
A lot of experience with Filipino women.
I was married to one for 10 years.
The Bay Area, I see, has the most interesting Asian people I've ever seen. Like, their hip hop bona fides are incredible. Every Bay Area Filipino person I know knows so much about hip hop. It's insane.
Yeah,
like a lot of them have better hip hop like trivia knowledge than a lot of Black people I know. I was really astounded when I started meeting a lot of Bay Area Filipino people.
Trinidad does have some beautiful women.
Paul Prescott. Look at him trying to get wife points.
Trinidad has some beautiful women.
Oh, beautiful women. I married one. Oh, shut up, Paul. Just shut up. Quit being happy. Go sit in your happiness. Fuck you and your happy ass. Just kidding, Paul. Actually, congratulations. Paul got married this year.
Oh, congratulations, Paul.
Shout out to Paul Prescott.
I feel like you were about to do a segue and I derailed it. Were you about to do a segue into
Dude, it doesn't matter because
Okay.
this is the funniest discussion we've ever had. And it's the last live stream of the year. So I'm
Jason
having
judges the quality of a city by how much interracial dating is possible.
right?
You know what was interesting was I remember even up through college. I went to college in Buffalo, New York, but there was a lot of New York City people up there because it was a state school. So a lot of the same dynamics just kind of continued. There was a lot of sneak fucking where it's like a lot of like white girls or Asian girls or whatever would want to try a black guy or a Hispanic guy. And you get like all this kind of sneak fucking, but a lot of it didn't really turn into relationships, and that's just me agreeing with what Pascal said. I feel like it wasn't really cool until the millennial. We did see people just forming like real relationships left and right and dating across like racial and class lines. That didn't really happen that much. So I mean, there was fucking,
Where'd you go to school in Buffalo?
Oh, sorry.
You in the Buff State or UBuff?
I went to UBuff.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know. The Buff schools are pretty well, man. Those are a lot of partying up in Buff.
Oh my god, yeah. Especially the partying was insane. I don't know if it's still like that, but back then, like, oh my god, the partying was crazy. It was it's very underrated as party schools, but but people got to realize with all that snow, it's like people are itching to do stuff because you're so cooped in all the time,
Right.
My Indian ex-girlfriend said her parents told her no BMWs. Guess what that stands for? BMWs? Black Mexicans or whites?
That's what I was thinking, actually.
I'm assuming that's what it means. That's funny. No blacks, Mexicans, or white. What I was going to segue into before we were pleasantly interrupted to go down this lane of extreme inappropriate conversation was there's a racial component that I think happens during the first Trump administration because of his racist rhetoric, which now, as more and more articles, I think, pivoted away from this idea of a unified white working class voting for Trump. And there was more, I think, interest pieces on minorities leaving the Democratic Party. In California, there's the Lexit, the Latino exit of the Democratic Party. We've definitely seen Trump get more black votes, even though Kamala Harris definitely got the lion's share of the black votes. Does there become more of an emphasis on things like culture and identity this second time around from these middle and upper middle class academics, let's say, or artistic culture tastemakers like the Ta-Nehisi Coateses of the world, the Ibrahim X. Kendis of the world, who maybe in our world people have piled on and said their obituaries for this man, but he's still a very important person. He can still get anything published in the Atlantic. Do we see a return to this type of behavior? Maybe we even see coverage of police brutality again in a way that we haven't seen since 2020.
I don't think that, and I could be wrong, right? Because remember, I'm the guy who was saying that the Democrats weren't going to try to use identity politics again after Obama, and lo and behold, we had Kamala Harris. But I don't think the liberal chattering class is going to risk its bona fides on race reductionism the way it did in the earlier 2010s during the Trump era, 2016s and 20 teens. In the Trump era, only because Trump won the second term and he turned so many states red and won so many swing states that by the posture of what I'm seeing in terms of the corporate America and what I'm seeing in terms of media, particularly the ABC case against Trump, they seem to be genuflecting and bending the knee towards Trump as opposed to wanting to alienate him and categorize him as what Ta-Nehisi Coates calls the first white president. So my position is that I think that the liberal chattering class, media establishment, whether that be the Atlantic, the New York Times, Washington Post, they're not going to they're not going to lean in with Trump is the fascist, Trump is the racist. I think they're going to go the other route and try to, man, Trump has the corporate oligarchs and the billionaires in his pocket. We're still in a capitalist country. Mm-hmm. Capital is backing Trump in a way that it wasn't the first term around, and I think they're going to kiss the ring.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think the one part that this is not really a disagreement. This is more like an added element. There's a lot of Black people and feminist type people who I say feminist type people rather than women because there's male feminists out there too, who gained a lot of traction during the period that I call like the Great Awakening, and they're not going to want to give up their spot or their primacy in the Democratic Party.
Angela Rye.
Yeah, a perfect example. Thank you. Angela Rye. Joy Reid's another one. That's another example too. But yeah, so I think what Pascal is saying is true, but they're gonna have a problem appeasing a lot of the people that they've kind of elevated during that period. And I'm kind of curious what they're gonna do because they can't fully tell them to kick rocks because they're too precariously situated versus the Republicans, where they can't afford to lose any of those demographics. But they seem afraid to chase the white working class because it's like, to me, the common sense says, okay, there's only so many trans people in America. There's only so many Black people, and you already have about 90% of the Black people. Like, your room to grow is with white people, but they seem deathly afraid to do it because whenever they seem to try to appeal to white people, especially white men, a whole bunch of their newly centered minority elites raise the alarm. Like, what are you doing? You're abandoning us, or you're gonna do this and that. And so,
does it feel to you though, Trevor and Pascal, like those minority elites in the Democratic Party are terrified of having conversations about political economy that isn't racialized political economy? We can't talk about capitalism unless it's racial capitalism, right?
Absolutely.
I agree.
That's why I framed them as race reductionists.
Yeah,
they gotta be race reductionists because it pays their bills.
Well, it's coming back to bite them in the behind, because when we see, and again, I talk about this in my latest issue of the Crisis Paper, if you see a plan in the GOP to say we have to start in areas that we can't penetrate through the easiest way in, and that's through school board elections, and you see these laws in places like or mandates from the school board in places like California. And this is one of those cases that I found very interesting that not a lot of people, if anyone, in our world covered, because I think there's a way people look at this stuff, and where you think you're being a savior, you're kind of making it worse. Now, in a school district in Southern California, a school board president got elected that was a bit of a religious nut job, but she passed a mandate that wasn't about God. It was about notifying parents if a student did something that wasn't in their paperwork. So, for example, if a student came to school and said, I'm no longer Pascal, I'm Penelope, I'm going to use the girls' bathroom, and I'm a female, and you refer to me as Penelope, and it wasn't on their initial admission paperwork, the teachers would then notify the parents. Now, mind you, no parents were notified because this didn't happen. The state of California found out about this, and the state attorney general, Rob Bonta, sued the school district and won. The school district and tons of parents appealed. Now, again, it wasn't like there were problems, if you will, with attendance being off because Pascal is Penelope. It just wasn't happening. What was a problem with the school that was brought up in one meeting was that this area of California is in it's in a place called Chino Hills. I believe it's east of LA County, a pretty well-to-do middle-class suburb, but it's also really hot there. They had 25 classrooms in the school district with broken AC, and they were about to face a week-long period of triple-digit days. So imagine being in a classroom with no AC. There was no way they weren't fixing that. They had several teachers. They were using substitutes to teach classes where you needed special qualifications, but they weren't going to pay those teachers. So they were just kind of subcontracting with substitutes. And their AP classes didn't have books. Only one teacher brought that up. No parents cared. What the parents cared about was the fact that the state was fighting against their ability to get notified. It wasn't about outing kids. It was about notifying parents, and that's how they made the argument. There's already distrust in government, and this kind of aided to it. And again, this isn't a place where they voted Democrat. I wouldn't say they're super liberal. It's on the more conservative end of California. Take that with whatever grain of salt you like to take that with. It's not as bad as Orange County or San Diego, but it's a little more conservative leaning. But again, they by and large voted Democrat. But now you have more people, parents in large were pissed off. They were saying, look, I just want the school to notify me, and you're fighting against the school notifying me.
I wanted to ask a question related to you guys, related to what you're talking about, right? First off, I'm not sure what to call this certain type of person, because I feel like if you say woke, it makes you sound like reactionary, but at the same time, they don't give you any proper term to call them that is okay. So it's like, I guess I just call them like social justice types, right? Let's say social justice progressives, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing I find with them a lot of the times is there's this kind of feeling that older people are the problem, that the only thing that older people can contribute to the discourse is being stuck in their old ways or being bigots. So it's kind of like you have to circumvent them and get to the younger generation. I think that kind of leads to this thing where it's like a lot of the political policies I've seen being pushed versus, towards like helping kids get gender affirming care and all this stuff. One of the big things they seem to fight for is not having to notify the parents, or that the parents need to be kind of re-educated, sometimes pretty forcefully, into understanding these types of politics. And there's this kind of way in which the parents seem to me to be seen as this kind of obstacle to progress. They either have to be re-educated or circumvented. That this is a way that the children are the future. But I don't mean even in a brainwashing, nefarious way. Just that the parents are it's a lost cause.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you guys have seen something similar, because I think it's causing a lot of this backlash that you're talking about, that people want to feel like they have the primary say in what happens to their kids, and whether you think these people are right or wrong. A lot of these people seem to be against that paradigm, like the parents, they know better than the parents as to what their kids need.
What do you think, Pascal?
Well, I think that one way or the other, this ends up working bad for Democrats. I mean, all you need to do is look at how much traction Trump got with that anti-trans commercial, and the way in which anything dealing with trans is framed in a way that, supporting it in any single way whatsoever is abnormal to the normative way that Americans have done things. And that kind of myopic kind of anti-trans politics is working. It's working. People are not accepting of this lifestyle. They don't have a problem with gays. Gay marriage doesn't seem to be as much of a problem as well. But the trans issue really seems to be a claw stuck in people's throat.
Because it's a winning, like this right here for me was a light bulb moment where I was like, they found the winning formula. And it's kind of sort of using the trans situation, which for a lot of people, it's hard to wrap your mind around. Okay, well, I'll call this person whatever they want to be called, but I get my eyes say one thing, my mind might say another, whatever, call them what they want to be called, whatever. Kids jumping on, and I'm going to be a different identity. It doesn't happen as much as people want it to happen. And again, in this school district, it was never a thing. But the fact that this school district ended up being a domino moment for more school districts, larger school districts, to then adopt a similar measure, really put the Democratic Party, who's got a supermajority in the state of California, on their heels. And it's like, look, you sent all these people, all these activists out to this area that never got that kind of attention in the first place. And the results are coming back. People are pissed. There's a lot of minorities in this area as well, equally pissed. Go ahead.
I sent an article to the chat of something I read this week. I'm not fully sure how much I agree with it. On the surface, I do. I just gotta think about it more. Like, I literally just read it a couple days ago, but it's very interesting. This guy Joseph Heath has a Substack. He's this author, and he made an interesting case where he was like that a lot of people overestimated the mainstream tolerance to LGBTQ issues due to the gay marriage thing. This article popped up because one of you just mentioned gay marriage and everything. I think it was you, Jason, and how it was accepted by the mainstream and passed. And this guy framed it that it wasn't so much that Americans got so much more progressive and open-minded, but that the gay marriage issue was pushed along a line of thought that is very popular with Americans, which is privacy and the right to be free and not have your freedom infringed on. So gay marriage was sold as, hey, this is what I want to do in the privacy of my own home. I want to be free to choose who I associate with, and I don't want the government telling me what to do. And like the same American people, it doesn't even want to be told to wear masks in the pandemic. That really resonates with them. So they didn't really have to expand their gender or sexual orientation consciousness. It was kind of sold under a line of argument that was something that America was founded on. Like, don't tax me without my permission. Don't do this without my permission. And he made an interesting point that this new pro-LGBTQ activism is the opposite. It's not just about don't tell me what not to do in the privacy of my own home, but I'm going to tell you what to do in the privacy of your own home, how you have to talk about things, how you have to refer to yourself. Like, I'm going to tell you, you need to start calling yourself cisgendered, and you don't have a say about it. This is what you have to do. And he was making the argument that that's why this is failing, that these people thought with the gay marriage thing, oh, we have kind of a mandate almost to push more of this consciousness, but they're unwittingly doing the opposite of what worked for them with gay marriage. I thought it was a pretty interesting argument.
It's interesting because we're in this moment of the New York Times wrote an article that was mildly interesting, and I stress the word mildly, about a libertarian streak right now in things that 10, 15 years ago were highly illegal, gambling being one of them across the board, and marijuana being another, right? Marijuana is extremely popular right now. Tons of states, if not all 50, have some sort of legalized laws about it. And gambling with online gambling is extremely popular as well. And there's tax havens for both of those things, right? In Puerto Rico. And when we look at the degeneracy that we're getting from gambling, especially, how it's attacking kind of these downwardly mobile young men that don't really have much to look forward to other than these insane parlays. Because when we talk about gambling, it's no longer just point spreads. It's about kind of the fantasy sports of it all. So there's a real, I don't want to say gamification of a game, but it's just a lot different than I think the old days of Jimmy the Greek giving you the point spread.
I would add stocks to that too. It's all the same category. Now stocks are this gamified thing in your pocket as well. And a lot of people are doing both. A lot of people are using Robinhood for 5 minutes, just switching over to check their parlay spreads. So it's like
crypto as well.
Yeah, crypto as well. Yeah.
No, all this stuff is kind of working together. In this kind of, I could let people do what they want to do, right? We're not going to ruin your life anymore with stopping you for having an eighth of weed on you anymore. We're not going to. I don't know too many people that got arrested for gambling, but these things are easy to do and highly legal because we do have this super libertarian streak in society right now, and I do think that has a little bit to do with what you're talking about, Trevor, as far as like, don't tax me unless I want to get taxed, and F the government, blah 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 blah, like we saw with Luigi Mangione. We're gonna take out CEOs because fuck them, which that's cool, but ultimately there's something missing though in most people's analysis when they talk about this libertarian streak, and that's more of an opening up of markets that were kind of illegal at one point in time, and what happens when we open up these illegal markets to neoliberalization in a very atomized society. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And it's kind of these next 4 years can be interestingly frightening because I don't think there's the hope that was there in 2016 that you had with the idea of Bernie Sanders, or even if you're a super liberal, the idea of Elizabeth Warren, even, or just some sort of resistance.
Oh yeah, and this is something that I actually wanted to talk about before. We were touching on it a little bit before we started recording, and I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts about it. I personally feel like Bernie Sanders came back out, and now he's talking that 2020 talk, and I'm like, dude, I don't want to hear it now, man. If you stood the line and kept talking your talk throughout the Biden administration, you would be so well positioned. The squad would be so well positioned to capitalize on this huge failure of centrist liberalism. For 4 years, they seem to have won. The centrist liberals, like MAGA, was in disarray, and the Bernie left was kind of in disarray, and they were given 4 years to do what they wanted, and they just stepped on the dicks the whole time, stepped on a bunch of rakes, fucked everything up. And if Bernie Sanders wasn't playing ball, if AOC wasn't trying to be a centrist darling and play play ball with these people, and look what that got her. You see how did just laughed in her face with the oversight committee, and if she had stuck to her guns, there'd be so many people championing her right now. On the left, Bernie Sanders, would be in such a good position not to run again, but at least to be a kingmaker for the next left candidate. To enter the mainstream. And I just feel like there was a lot of people overestimated the degree to which centrist liberals won. And now we have MAGA reascendant, and the left was kind of the mainstream left was kind of asleep at the switch of 4 years, and now they're scrambling to take advantage of a opportunity that they were not prepared or in position to capitalize on.
I think that Bernie Sanders forced the left to cuck itself.
Yeah, good, much better way to put it.
In what way?
In that, put your thing between your legs. Don't try to screw anything up for Biden and the centrists, because Trump is out there. God forbid you give him an opening, and keep quiet. Work with the Dems, even though they're going to try to put a shiv in your back at all costs. Shout out to Hakeem Jeffries, but don't fight back. And it costs, and it shut down the left.
Yeah, and if you do make a bunch of noise, we're gonna demonize you and treat you like crap for it. Like take someone like Breonna Sanders, who worked for Breonna Joy Gray, who worked for the Sanders campaign, and she smartly did not bend the knee like everyone else did, and she's much better positioned to talk shit about the Democrats after this loss than a Bernie is.
I just feel that I think that the bottom line is that Bernie Sanders had the ability to take a left and pivot it in a way that he could have made it a much more robust challenge to the heterogeneity of the orthodox centrist movement and make the left more vibrant, while instead, because of his fear of the ascendance of Trump, used a popular front strategy to coalesce around the Democratic Party's centrist faction to the detriment of the left.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. That's one of the things I agree with so much. I don't have much to add to it. That's the problem. Like I said.
Well, that's the scare. Again, that's kind of why I brought up the whole thing about these colored operators that kind of made their bones right before Trump gets elected, and then definitely towards the end of that administration during the horrible George Floyd summer, right? What happens to these people now that attention's kind of gone away, and no one's going to talk anymore about racism that befalls black men, because the black men are the white men of the minorities.
Black people, yeah.
Which I don't even know if that still holds the same kind of water that it held at a certain point in time. I think a lot of
all of these thought piece chucklehead Negroes and Negresses, they're all going down the wayside.
Yeah, no, they are.
I don't know, man. Hey, Bert Cooper just sent me a message the other day talking about how all these Negroes is just so buddy and Hannah Nicole Jones and Ibrahim X Kendi.
Well, no, they're not going to give up. I agree with you there. Like, I don't want to put words in Pascal's mouth, but I think what he might be saying is the same thing I'm thinking in that they're not going to have the opportunities. Like they're going to still want them. They're still they're not going to roll over and give up. But
their politics is not changing. I'm saying that there's going to be the elites that really run the chattering class.
I'm tired of them.
The publishing world is not going to give them the breath of fresh air in terms of space like they had in between 2016 and 2020.
I fully agree. and it wasn't even profitable.
Let
Like,
me be abundantly crass. Why people are tired of hearing about Negroes, man?
yeah,
they don't
Your
want to hear
reparations. So wait. Let me get this straight. I want to get everybody on screen here, right? Let's do this. I want to make sure that Pascal is the big square, and I'm going to go so far into this troublesome thing. How can we? There we go. Look at that. Pascal Robert. Are you saying right now? Just want to make sure you're saying this correctly. That we're not going to get our reparations money.
No, man, that's not going to happen. That was never going to happen. But what I'm saying is that the discourse in and of itself has become so tasteless in the body politic that, number one, you have people who are parts of the Democratic Party who are blaming the loss of Kamala Harris on that discourse, even though she didn't really use it that much. And number two, because Trump has won and his politics are ascendant, that all it's going to do is poke the eye of the MAGA chuds and give them more energy and give people like Steve Bannon more fuel. And because the liberals realize that they don't want to energize that politics, they're not going to give tolerance to that. They're not going to give voice to that race reductionism anymore.
So you're saying, I just want to make sure you're clear here that we can no longer point the finger at redlining and racism for our problems. And I just want to make sure.
Let me make this
clear.
You're
going to piss off a lot of Negrodom was very profitable in 2020.
No. I don't think it was ever profitable. It was only profitable to the people peddling it, but the actual corporations, they weren't making money off of it. Everything was flopping. If you check all the stuff that you thought was part of this new Black Renaissance, it was all money losers. Like, so I think it was personally profitable to the people pushing it.
Trevor, I hate to interrupt you, but I think you forgot that American Fiction won an Oscar.
That's a cultural thing. I'm talking about like how much money did it actually make?
I mean, if you had a foundation, do you give a shit if your foundation is successful or not?
Nonprofit Negroes in the foundation world cashed in with George Floyd money.
Yeah.
I'm sure they thought that was as long niggas is gonna keep getting their ass beat by the police. I'm sure they thought it was a never ending.
Listen, the Black Lives Matter was a multi-million-dollar hustle. Listen, all of those Negroes rode a gravy train. George Floyd's corpse, unfortunately, was a gravy train that a lot of Negroes rode to the bank several times. What I'm saying is that that check is cash and it ain't coming back again. Those days are over.
And I want to add to that, right? Because like there's this term called rent seeking in economics, and rent seeking is when it's something that it's a service doesn't really add to the bottom line. And a lot of what these people do is rent seeking. And to use an example like DEI, right? DEI is not the kind of thing that actually helps the firm's bottom line. Like if you go to like a law firm or a business organization, there's nothing in the DEI that helps the firm be profitable. But these people act like it needs to happen because the corporation or the law firm or whatever has to show that it's morally correct. And there's this kind of vague social benefit that it gives you as far as like you need to pay us to be the conscience of your organization. And corporations were dealing with it for a while, but it was almost like a form of emotional blackmail. Like there was this kind of thing where it's like, we don't want the bad press of, especially in this time with George Floyd. I don't know what they thought was going to happen, but I think more and more people have just started calling the bluff. They started realizing like, look, because we were in this like low interest rate environment. Money was cheap. It was zero interest loans left and right. And everyone had the tech mindset of like, hey, look, get market share, lose money, follow these loss leaders, get this huge market share, and then the profits will come later. You don't have to worry about profits. That's old school. What you do is grow your market share, grow your trendiness, and then you'll corner some kind of market. You know, the Amazon strategy. So like you look at streaming shows, streaming channels. They were like losing money left and right. All these streaming shows make no money a lot of the times. They get you cultural cachet, and they're hoping it's going to lead to more people subscribing to the streaming service. But no, people are sharing passwords and all that. So I think a lot of these Negroes were like, "Hey, we're going to pursue this rent-seeking behavior. We're going to sell ourselves as the conscience of white liberals, the paid conscience of white liberals, and whatever."
It's a great job, though.
Yeah, it's a great job, but they weren't thinking about it in terms of, at the end of the day, a corporation is a corporation, and its generosity only extends to how far its bottom line is covered. And right now, a lot of these corporations, the shareholders are like, "You need to show us some money. You know, rent's due. You've got to show profits." A lot of these stocks are in the toilet. You know, the free money is gone. You know, and that's what these people were depending on to get paid. Like, these white people having a paid conscience is a luxury. Is a luxury. You know, once they feel like their jobs, if a CEO is like feels threatened that the job is going to be gone if they don't show the shareholders profits next quarter, David Zaslav isn't going to be like, "Hey, Black Lives Matter, you know, here's $5 million to be my conscience." Like no.
It was a one-time thing that I really do believe in my soul that a lot of people that received that foundation money thought it was going to be there forever, because it did seem like for a while that 2020 was forever, right?
Yeah,
there was this endless amount of coverage that we had been seeing for years leading up into it, because Black Lives Matter does come out of Trayvon Martin, which is during Obama's administration. So we were seeing a good stream of coverage of police brutality or vigilante violence for at least almost 10 years before. The thing is, when everybody got broke the fuck off, it was like this. It was, what did Charlie Sheen say about hookers? "I don't pay them for sex. I pay them to leave." And that's what it felt like, in my opinion. I don't know if you feel the same way, Pascal, but it felt like, "Hey, we're going to give you niggas the most insane amount of billions you niggas have seen since the 60s. As a matter of fact, adjusted for inflation. You see that, Bob? Look at, hey, niggas, look." And they showed them all this money. This is more zeros than you cats have ever seen in your fucking lives. And it doesn't have to go through the government at all. You can get it straight. It wasn't forever. It was to say peace, and we're done.
Yeah, I think that's a problem. A lot of these people thought this was a forever system that was going to last forever, but now they don't need them anymore, because look, they squandered their moment, right, to make any real political change by just protesting and catharsis and emotional blackmail. And then it reached a point where it's like, okay, the people are kind of demoralized. Like, people don't have the energy for it anymore. Like the masses. Like, police brutality didn't stop, but somehow there's no video showing every day of it anymore. And when there are, people forget about it. You know,
because it had to be. First of all, Trevor, I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's okay.
It had to be a black issue.
Yeah.
And I get it, as a black person, that right now my tags are expired. It's not fun to get pulled over and get fucked with by the police. Getting fucked with by the police is very different in Mexico than it is in the United States. It's a hell of a lot safer. But it's a horrible feeling. But it's also a feeling that a lot of people deal with. And when it was made a racialized issue, it's like, well, you're going to people that actually do deal with it in the same way. If you really want to make laws about it, now you've eliminated them, and they only can have empathy, and they can't deal with it the same way you deal with it.
One thing that was interesting was every now and then there was a white person with police brutality who got into the news, and you would see like people champion them too. But I think
Not
for
the
a certain
same.
for a certain type of I hate to use the word race hustler, but some people really are race hustlers. That was a threatened thing to their narrative. Like they couldn't let that be the face of it. But I think this is kind of what a big problem was, is that at the end of the day, you see these people pop up with scandals where they all bought themselves houses. They gave themselves six-figure salaries, and regular black people who were um, believing in these people got nothing, you know? And it's like people got sick of them and they don't have a base anymore. And I think the powers that be realize these people, to the extent they ever had a base, I think the base was always overrated and overestimated. But people kind of realize like these people, they don't have the black masses behind them. Any threat that they have is an empty threat, you know, and people are willing to call the bluffs now, and they also don't have the money just waste throwing at them anymore, and they're flailing. But I agree with Pascal that I don't think these people are going to have the same open the open welcoming environment that they had. I don't think they're going to go away and stop trying, but I mean, look at all the things, all the DEI departments that have been canceled left and right, and nobody cares.
Companies,
Yeah,
large companies like Walmart.
Yeah, and they realize this, like, okay, the inflation's too high. Black people still need deals. These people are trying to. This class has been trying to organize a boycott of Walmart in response to DEI. Regular poor black people who need the deals that Walmart has, why are they going to fight for you as a black elite to get a DEI job? How does that, like, there's a weird trickle down social justice that these people want to believe that regular black people believe in. And it's like, no, you guys use George Floyd to get yourselves corporate jobs that don't help us. None of that trickles down to us. You got yourself shows. You got yourself MSNBC talking head spots. And it's like, at least if Trump creates a crypto free for all, I can buy some crypto and indirectly benefit from that. You know, like that's the logic of a lot of these people. I think a lot of black people have checked out on this bourgeois activist class, and their white handlers know it. They know that these people have even less of a base than before, and that they're toothless. So yeah, I agree with Pascal. I just don't think, and also the cheap money is just not there anymore. People realize that this blitzscaling approach to business doesn't work. All these streaming services are realizing, like, okay, this idea that we're just gonna lose a bunch of money to get market share is not gonna happen.
Either you made your trillion or you didn't. It's
Yeah.
as simple as that. Either you made your trillion or you didn't.
Yep.
And now
we're pulling up the ladder.
They're trying to figure out how to make money.
Yeah.
Right. You had the biggest Marvel flop so far in history with Kraven the Hunter, which was interesting in the sense of, I don't know anyone that knows who that character is outside of people that watched the Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s or hardcore comic book people, but maybe this will work. It didn't. So even the Marvel and Star Wars thing can't print money for them the way it did years ago. So you have just industries in flux. And this has been a great time for the right because there's two factors that they're winning for a change, which is culturally, finally, and politically, which they've been winning. They've been winning politically, but I don't want to say the left, let's say the centrist, the Democrats, whatever you want to call them, liberals, have won culturally. You can have gays in Hollywood and they can teach. You can have trans people be represented. Black people can do whatever they want to do now. We're winning the culture war, but politically we're losing ground massively. And now it's like politically ground has been lost massively. And now the culture war, it's in the hands no longer of liberal elites like, was it Pod Save America?
Yeah.
Now it's in the hands of more apolitical people like Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn. And if you do have a political stance, one of the top 4 shows in America is Tucker Carlson.
I want to build on something with the Kraven the Hunter point, right? Like, these people, I think, are good at courting white gatekeepers. That's where they get these jobs and everything, but they're not good at building a grassroots support. So they're not able to bring audiences in with the things that they do, right? Like, so Kraven the Hunter is not the best example because it's technically not a Marvel Studios movie, right? It's Sony. Sony has rights to the Spider-Man characters, but they made a deal with the MCU that they can't use Spider-Man himself. So they're trying to milk what they have left in the Spider-Man mythos without using Spider-Man. So they're using like Kraven the Hunter, Madam Web. It's all like flopping, right? But the MCU itself has all the big characters, and look what they're doing. They have a black Captain America. Now they could have just kept Chris Evans there and threw whatever money they wanted that he wanted at them, but they were like, you know what? Let's be more diverse. Let's cash in on this.
ID poll, baby. ID poll.
Yep. Let's cash in on this, and they've been flopping left and right. They had a movie with a female Thor, and Thor's kind of cucked, and they have this move. All these shows that are trying to keep, pander to this, and they have a black Captain America. Like, no disrespect to Anthony Mackie, but he's not like a leading man. Like,
damn,
I don't think he is. I never seen anyone say
he wore the Gordon Gartrell shirt on Jimmy Fallon.
That was a hot move. That was a hot move, but I just don't think he's a Chris Evans. That's gonna be an interesting flop to see. Like, they had this black Captain American movie, and it has failed so many
test screenings,
and they've reshot it like 3 times, and apparently it's still failing test screenings. And I don't know if you guys saw the show that was preceding it. Yeah, that was terrible shit lib identity politics to the max. It was terrible. You know, it was like Black Lives Matter Captain America, and it's like, okay, people are cool with that for a little while, but the Disney shareholders, if a Captain America movie flops, people are gonna want heads. Like they started firing people. They started firing Victoria Alonso, and other people are getting fired. Like Kevin Feige is not going to choose Nicole Hannah-Jones and Ta-Nehisi Coates over his job. Like,
but think about who wrote. So for those that don't know, in the 90s, I believe, there was a black Captain America story written that takes place while Steve Rogers, the original Captain America, is frozen. The story is taken from the Tuskegee experiment. And that story is that black soldiers were tested with the super soldier serum and sent to Germany to fight the Nazis, because that's the whole thing. Captain America is a World War II soldier. And they came back home and were forgotten. And in the series, which is a mess, it's a mess. I would say watch it for the mess, and you can really understand liberal sensibilities and where they fail. And if you do have little people that watch that stuff, which is fine, I'm never gonna be one of those people like, don't let your kids watch blah 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 blah. These are great, to me, teaching episodes, especially to teach about, because the whole thing is about these characters called flag smashers, which have stolen the formula for secret soldier serum, and they're trying to eliminate borders, because during the snap where Thanos kills half of the population, for example, for Israel to exist, because they lose half their population, they have to make nice with Palestinians, and they bring over tons of Palestinians and eliminate certain accords that they had for years before. And Palestinians are finally recognized as full citizens. For example, that's a part of the storyline of that show. All that is upended when Tony Stark snaps everyone back. And the flag smashers are these kind of, they become Al-Qaeda type people, right? Right, Trevor? That now are kind of terrorists. But watching this and understanding liberal sensibilities, you go, oh, okay, this is where we can show the kids why this is kind of a fucked up storyline and blah, 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 blah. But it's also the storyline of Sam, I forget his name in the movie, who plays Falcon, who then becomes Captain America, and not the Winter Soldier, who actually was Steve Rogers' friend, but a person that doesn't have the super soldier serum, who is a regular man, becomes Captain America and no longer is Falcon. He gets a new Falcon suit, and that's going to be the Captain America moving forward. And I think that story would have worked in 2020 when people wanted these kinds of Black stories like Wakanda Forever, the other Africa movie. Like, let's give women spears, because if we give women spears, it's not racist or sexist, it's girl bossing.
Oh, the Woman King.
Yeah. It's like, you know, how do we give you racist imagery and you niggas love it?
But
right, because
I would argue that people never wanted that. Twitter wanted that. Like, people overestimate that Twitter is a real place, and that there's a whole bunch of Black people who think like Twitter Black people. But this stuff doesn't make money. The only one that made money was Wakanda Forever, but that was based on the goodwill of the first Black Panther. Like,
well, Black Panther's first appearance in the movies is Civil War.
Yeah, and that was done great.
Rocked, right?
That rocked.
That fucking rocks.
Yeah.
Black Panther is because 3 Black guys sitting right here. If we all had the power that T'Challa has, and we had this massive fucking treasure trove of indestructible metal, and we had the intellectual ability to create weapons with it, we wouldn't then go, let us go to the savannas of Africa to fight our foes. Fuck no. We have spaceships and shit and big fucking lasers. Why don't we just blow them up from like 1,000,000 miles away? We have the technology, but you know, we have to ride on the backs of animals with our magical spears. And no one had a problem with that shit.
Yeah. I mean, I think people like the Killmonger character and his politics. So I think people gave it more of a pass than it deserved. But by the time of part 2, they're fully into just it's so undeniable how bad their politics are. Without the charisma of Michael B. Jordan and the superficial radicalism, I think if they were to try to revisit that well now, I think financially it would do way worse. Like, these people just don't make money, and when that movie flops, and Kevin Feige's got to tell the shareholders, we're flopping Captain America movies, and the shareholders got to be like, didn't you guys have Chris Evans? Didn't these things make a lot of money? Like, why are we not paying him? Why do we have a guy who's still able to work? Why are we not paying him? And you can't just say, well, you have to realize back in the days there was America enslaved Black people, and we owe them. Like, get the fuck out of here. You're fired.
You know when Marvel was great? Blade.
Yeah.
Blade. We've all seen Blade. Everybody on the screen has seen Blade. Blade, I don't care what anybody says, is a Black movie, Black female lead, Black lead, white supports, great fucking movie. Wesley Snipes nails that character, saves the studio.
Oh yeah.
Right? Starts off the whole Marvel cinematic universe. A few years later, there was talk probably about 4 or 5 years ago. We're going to remake Blade. We're going to bring Mahershala Ali, an Oscar-winning actor from the Bay, in.
He was a great rapper. He was a great rapper too.
Yeah. He was on Hyro's label. And now they're talking about scrapping all the Mahershala Ali shit because Wesley Snipes made an appearance in his 60s in the newest Deadpool movie. And I'm like, okay, you can do that and win over the crowd you lost if you make it the way you made it before.
That's the problem.
Without the hopes of selling toys. And that's the hard part, because here's what people need to understand about movies. It doesn't matter what you make at the box office. I'll say this again. When you see these big movies and think, oh, they didn't make any money, sometimes they don't care.
Yeah.
Because they're going to make it on the stuff.
But if you could make $1 billion in the theater and sell the stuff,
and sell it, well, then you have. That's why you get 1 million Marvel movies. You get 1 million Star Wars movies, because George Lucas
you could do
showed
both.
He showed you. I made one movie and sold toys to try to finance it. And it worked in a way that we've never seen it work before, to the point where everyone wanted a toy line. There is a toy line, Pascal Robert, for the Alien franchise. Did you know there was Alien toys in 1979?
Wow.
That's an R-rated film.
Yeah.
Rambo had an action figure.
Rambo had a cartoon. Rambo had an after-school cartoon.
R-rated.
Yeah.
Because the money is in the merchandising.
Yeah. What Marvel did was, and Star Wars did this too, like the movie's not a lost leader for the toy line. The movie's gonna make $1 billion and the toy is gonna make $1 billion, and both properties, both Marvel and Star Wars, squandered that by chasing again this audience that doesn't exist. They alienated their old audience for a bunch of people who tweet a lot and who don't spend
liberal identity.
Yeah, totally. Like, do you know the reason why the Marshall Ali blade didn't happen? Why it kept getting kicked to the curb is because they wanted to make it like a Black Lives Matter blade. They wanted they're hiring like relatively unknown people who have good social media followings to write these movies. They have like no experience, and then what they wanted to do was have Blade's gay daughter be the star of the movie.
Are
and
you fucking serious?
Yeah, and Marshall Ali was like, "I'm not gonna sign on to this to basically be like the cheerleader and booster to my like." They're basically trying to use Blade as a vehicle to push his Black queer intersectional feminist daughter and kind of make her the face of this thing. And that's the problem. You can't just bring Wesley Snipes back, but you have to clear out the Ta-Nehisi Coates style, Nicole Hannah-Jones style, Roxane Gay style type writers that you've allowed to infiltrate. Like the story that you brought up about Isaiah Bradley in the 2000s with the Black Captain America, the comic book. Yeah. People were mixed about it as far as the politics of it. Some people didn't like it, some people did like it. But one thing I remember about it, because I actually read it, it was written by this guy named Robert Morales, who I think is a pretty good writer. Mm-hmm. He's dead now. And it was drawn by Kyle Baker, who's a phenomenal. There are two very accomplished, very talented Black comic creators. And one thing I would say is, whether you ultimately agree with it as misguided or not, the sheer quality of it was pretty good, I thought. Mm-hmm. Personally, but now Captain America and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is written by this guy named Malcolm Spellman. His only credit is Empire.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's like they're just like, okay, let's just pick a Black guy who did something popular, and he has like no real writing experience, especially writing something political. And that's the thing. If you look at the people who are directing and writing these things now, they're just picking marginalized people with very flimsy resumes, some who just have big Twitter followings, and hiring them to handle billion-dollar properties, and they're just trying to Twitter up the property. They're just trying to make the property. They're writing for each other. They're writing so that Roxane Gay can give them kudos on Twitter. To me, that's how.
There's a lot to that, because like I said, my friend Bert's been in these spaces with these people, and he says it's definitely a fraternity, or not a fraternity, but it is kind of a club like that. But what's sad is when you see stuff like Luke Cage, which I thought was about as good as you were going to do Luke Cage, right? Yeah. That's a little known Marvel character that actually has a huge blaxploitation past. And I don't know if you knew this, Trevor or Pascal, but Quentin Tarantino owned the rights for Luke Cage for the longest time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he wanted to do Luke Cage as a blaxploitation.
And that's the only way I think
Django is. That's the only way Django is. He said it. That's Luke Cage. Originally, that was supposed to be Luke Cage, and I'm glad he didn't get his hands on it.
Oh, I disagree. I would have loved it.
You would have seen Luke.
Luke Cage only works as blaxploitation. Like, I always joke that guy that they had to hire Luke Cage, if I get me in trouble, but he has too much light skin energy. He does not feel like Luke Cage. He sounds like he talks too proper.
Very proper.
And they talk to him, and he said, "Yeah, I read these comics and I didn't like them." He has very bourgeois sensibilities. He said he didn't want to play it like it was in the comics. He wanted it to, so instead of being from Harlem, from the streets, now he's the son of a preacher from the South, and it's like.
So Trevor, you know what Trevor wanted, Pascal? He wanted Luke Cage to tear Jessica Jones' ass up.
Yeah. You want Luke Cage to slap your mama hot sauce.
Yeah, he wanted Luke Cage out there slapping the shit out of people and just banging the shit out of everybody. You wanted Luke Cage. What's that light-skinned woman name? Is she light-skinned or some kind of Puerto Rican? Real fine. Fuck with Cory Booker for a minute.
Oh, Rosario Dawson.
Rosario Dawson. You wanted Luke Cage to give Rosario Dawson the business, didn't you?
I mean, he gave a little bit of business to
full business. You wanted the business.
Yeah, I wanted
Black Dynamite. I
wanted like that. That's what I wanted, Luke Cage, because I used to read the old 70s comic books, and they are insane. Like, he's running around Harlem fighting. There's a guy with like a shark head and a zoot suit, you know, that he's fighting.
It was Snakehead. It's Cottonmouth and there's another one, snake name. I can't think of the name, but yeah.
Hold on, at least I could find the cover. I'm gonna find a cover that's gonna.
I thought they did a good job. You know why I like Luke Cage? I thought they did a good job with the villain's story.
Yeah.
What's the
Cottonmouth? The Marshall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which of course they cut him in the half of it to have his childhood friend that didn't work the same. It was, yeah. I mean, and Mike Coulter himself said that he didn't want to do it the way it was in the comic book. He wanted to bring like a Black Lives Matter, Black excellence sensibility. So we have like Black excellence Luke Cage.
We have the Martha's Vineyard Luke Cage.
Yes. I didn't want to see that.
Damn. You got hella mad at that scene where the black kids try to rob him, and he was like, "You try to rob me on the day of niggerdom, in the site of where Crispix addicts died for you. How dare you?"
And then he sees Method Man. Hey, Meth, I really liked you in that song. Like, God, come on, man, get out of here.
Wu-Tang, dude. Every episode was a Wu-Tang song.
The music was good. I give the music.
The music was great.
Yeah.
I thought it was shot well. I thought the gangster's story could have been its own series, because that's what I thought was the most interesting part. And they had really good actors.
Yeah, I thought so too. It just wasn't Luke Cage to me.
No, it was not. It was not. And even the newer Luke Cage is still kind of mildly hood. But
yeah,
they did take away all that. I don't know if I want to see Django Cage. I don't know if I want to go that far into it, because Quentin Tarantino just loves. He says nigga more than most niggas.
Yeah. Maybe not Quentin Tarantino himself doing it, but the idea of a blaxploitation Luke Cage, I would have liked.
Django, just watch Django and think Luke Cage. That literally is what it is. I think he's even got an homage to Luke Cage in one of the scenes with Jamie Foxx.
I mean, Nicolas Cage took his stage name from Luke Cage. So
no way.
Yeah, that's why he chose Luke Cage. He was a big Luke Cage fan.
Really?
Yeah. So you can Google it. It's crazy.
He gets more and more interesting.
Yeah,
Nicolas Cage, like, because it was Nicholas Coppola is his name.
Yeah, and he didn't want to be accused of nepotism, so he was looking for another name. And he's a huge comic book fan.
He's like Francis Ford Coppola.
Yep, nephew.
Yeah. His name is Coppola, and he but Cage had a very niche following. But a lot of white kids growing up like Luke Cage and those old comic books for problematic reasons. Like they liked the guy from Dexter's Laboratory, that guy in Powerpuff Girls. He did a retro Luke Cage comic in the 2000s during the Black Lives Matter era, and he leaned to that 70s Luke Cage. And it was full of pimp slapping and all that stuff, and he got canceled. It's actually never hear about it because he tried to do
No.
Luke Cage in the 70s way, and in the Great Awakening era, people weren't having it. They're like, "What the fuck is this? We don't want a white guy writing this style of Luke Cage." But I'll go on record saying that was a great comic. I like that. I like that comic. I enjoyed it. Like it captured the craziness.
I love hearing Trevor go to his retrograde sensibilities.
Yeah,
Dude,
I'm problematic. I'm sorry, but I liked it.
I don't think the people that run stuff like Marvel from the movie standpoint or even the animation standpoint know how to do that movie, because I think they're too afraid of having people not like it. Having black people say stuff about it. Like there's movies that are extremely stereotypical that sometimes Marvel is a little proactive about, and they'll have what I heard somewhere, what's the movie Coco, has some, problematic stereotypical elements to it, and they had proactively some prominent Spanish Mexican voices come out and say very positive things about the movie before anybody can start calling it racist. I don't know if Marvel can do that the same way with a movie like Luke Cage, the way it reads. Even Blade, the way it reads. Blade talks like a pimp.
I'm going to share the screen real quick, but I want to show an example. This is what Genndy Tartakovsky's Blade looked like. Is it coming on the screen? And people were not feeling it, but it was the most true to the original Blade thing. I'm sorry, I said Blade. I meant Luke Cage. It's the most true to the original Luke Cage thing. I thought it was pretty good, and I think but there were all these think pieces about it. I don't know if they even completed the series. I think they might have stopped.
He's all about the money too. There's no real
yeah, exactly.
Even Iron Fist is kind of like that too. There's no like higher meaning for the shit they do. They're just like, well, where's the money, baby?
There's a classic Luke Cage story where he flies across the ocean to get $1,000 from Dr. Doom because he owes him money.
I heard about that one.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. He's the way he was depicted in the show was very different. It's Bill Cosby, Luke Cage.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it too. Yeah, Martha's Vineyard, Bill Cosby, Luke Cage. Yeah, it's
Bill Cosby's a guy that we don't talk enough about. His lasting effects on blackness. Remember Family Matters?
Oh yeah, good one.
So Family Matters was ABC's attempt to cash in on Cosby without black writers. So I believe the first episode, the sister that lives in the house walks in the door. She's had a busy day, and she goes, "Oy vey." I was like, yeah, all the black women I know talk like that. And Reginald Vell Johnson is supposed to be a working class Bill Cosby, kind of reprising his role from Die
Hard. Yeah.
And then the Urkel character kind of is the only thing that hits on that show.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you ever seen the Key and Peele sketch?
Yeah, I remember.
Have you ever seen that, Pascal?
On based on Family Matters?
Yes.
I haven't seen that.
Where Key and Peele are okay, here, talk to Trevor for 5 seconds. I gotta find this for you. You have to see this.
Can you show it?
Okay. Yeah, I'll talk about what I remember about it. It was kind of like meta. So it was about Jaleel White as Steve Urkel, kind of, if I remember correctly, like he's dominating the show and everyone's scared of him, and behind the scenes he's like a monster. But he looks and talks like Urkel, and I think it's like, if I remember, he's gonna play the sketch, so I don't want to spoil it by getting too in depth. But it's basically like everybody on the set is afraid of Urkel because he has too much power and he's like a bully. Okay, he has it up. So what's interesting in the chat, everyone still calls him Everybody Hates Chris. I thought they'd say Abbott Elementary. That's really interesting. That's another show I think not as many people watch as people think.
No, not at all. Who wants to watch Black Office? Office.
Wow, you guys don't like Abbott Elementary?
I'm not personally a fan, but I don't really like the original Office either, so I'm not the best person to ask.
Wow. You hate America. Or do you think Pam's a whore?
I like the UK Office, but the American one is too, because America, at the end of the day, is afraid to really do like caustic class analysis. So they make the Office culture too cuddly at the end of the day. You know, it doesn't really go for the jugular in terms of. It makes it kind of cutesy, I think, at the end of the day.
The second season is this, or I think the first season they do a few note for note shows from the British Office, which I didn't like because I think the British humor was too dry for me.
Yeah, it is pretty dry, but it does go for the jugular more. And I feel like I heard that they tried it the first season. It didn't play well to the American audience, so they had to kind of cuddly up the.
Well, Steve Carell's character was not likable.
Yeah, he was not.
And I think the reason why that doesn't work as much is because by the time The Office hits, which is like people forget The Office has been off the air longer than it was on the air. But when that character first comes out, it's even before 40-Year-Old Virgin hits. And it's very unlikable. And in the American context, if you have a boss that's that bad and racist, you're going to get rid of him. And to have someone that can kind of circumvent human resources like that was just too much of a fantasy land. So he had to have a redeeming quality about him, and you get that in the second Office.
I think Americans need escapism more. Like, I think they don't want to see that, because the British one is depressing. Like, he's a realistically bad boss. You know, I have a theory as well that American people, it's gonna sound bad, but I feel like American people can't tell someone's stupid unless you make them really, really, really stupid. So it's like the British version of the boss, I think, is too believable that they wouldn't get they're not supposed to how they're supposed to find him, I guess. You know what I mean?
I think for me, Gervais plays such a despicable man. Somebody would have shot him in real life or beat him up. And I think Steve Carell tries to do that in the first episode, because the first episode is a note for note, the first show of the British Office. That character is so despisable that you're like, I can't watch this again because there's nothing good about that guy.
Somebody in the chat says, LOL, Black Office, really like we're reaching, but she's admitted it's a Black Office.
Yeah, it's the same showrunners and writers.
Yeah, she even hired the most prolific Office director to do the first episode. Like, she's admitted that it's a Black Office.
Everything is The Office after The Office. So that's just what it is. But the thing about that, the second episode of that show, which I still think is one of the funniest things I've ever seen, when Steve Carell does the Chris Rock bit, what about niggas and black people?
Oh, I didn't see that one.
You never saw that?
No, but it sounds pretty daring. Like I would watch something like that. I saw most of the later season episodes when I tried it, so maybe that's why it didn't grab me.
It gets especially after Steve Carell's character becomes like very, very lovable, then the show is an interesting ensemble with those people. But to your point about the class dynamics of that office itself, it all just disappears and goes away and becomes kind of an everybody hates Michael, but everybody loves Michael show, because Steve Carell is just a really good improvisational actor. And you can see that that's a really good cast of no names that had improvisational skill. Like the guy that plays Stanley does not talk like that.
Oh, wow.
At all. And he plays a black stereotype.
Yeah.
Really well. They joke about it sometimes on the show, which is kind of funny. But the other minorities on the show definitely get a lot more.
Is that the character Craig Robinson plays?
No, Craig Robinson played another character that he just kind of created on his own, which was the Daryl office or warehouse guy character, because Patrice O'Neill didn't like the show, and he left before he even passed away.
I'm sorry, there's a great comment. So is Modern Family Home Office? Very good comment.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Everything is after The Office hit and the way it hit.
Yeah.
I would love to know, and I'm sure this stat is out there somewhere, how much time in an evening The Office takes up on bandwidth for the internet.
Yeah,
I know
it's
people that
apparently
still watch
it's very popular on streaming. Like it does better than all these new streaming shows. People would rather rewatch The Office than like try a lot of these new shows. So yeah, it's a definite cultural icon. Here's the thing I want to talk about too, because we were talking about it before, and it goes into what we were saying before about the whole idea of we talked about how the squad squandered their positioning, and Pascal was talking about how Democrats, the left, kind of how the squad and what's his name, Bernie Sanders, kind of made the left cuck itself, and now Jamal Bowman's gone, Cory Bush is gone. AOC, like they kind of gassed her up like she was going to become part of the club, and clearly she's not. And like, how do you feel about that Bernie movement, but also like the media that surrounded the Bernie movement? Because I feel like there was that time where everything seemed to be popping, like, and it's been holding on, but what happens under Trump? Like DSA, I don't know if either of you guys are involved in DSA. I'm personally not, but I know a lot of people who were, and I know their membership rolls like exploded during that period,
and they've also subsequently shrank.
Yeah, I'm sure it has to have shrank. Like, there's something so demoralizing about that Biden win, but I think the Biden win alone and Bernie losing wasn't enough. It was, I think, Bernie's capitulation. I feel like if Bernie stuck to his guns more, it would have not have been so devastating. But I think seeing him basically play ball the way he did, and AOC kind of, if not betray him, not enthusiastically, she tried to play both sides, I kind of think. There was a lot of disillusionment that I think happened that hurt. I'm curious what you guys think about that.
I agree. I think that there was, I mean, not so much with her individually, but I think collectively, the so-called squad and the Sanders left, and I think the left, well, I mean, one of the things I found problematic is the way that left media, Sanders media, if you will,
great way to put it,
started to cannibalize itself on the internet in the wake of the fall of his election bid in 2020. And you had everyone attacking each other over these ridiculous little ideas, whether they were good ideas or not. But it was all kinds of just like, it was all kinds of uncomradely like attacks on each other that I found fundamentally just very childish and bitter. And overall, I think turned a lot of people off to the left. I mean, if we can't have unity around the fact that we all realize capitalism is the problem and we need at least some form of democratic socialism, if not better, then I mean, what's the sense of people looking to us for solutions in the first place?
Well, it's like punk rock, right? It's like some people really dig the music. A lot of people really dig the edgy identity.
The scene. I think the word you're looking for is the scene, and I've seen that happen a lot of times where people get attracted to the scene rather than the ideas. And I do think it kind of, as someone who lived in Brooklyn, where like was kind of like ground zero for it at a certain time, especially when
you were there. That's a good point. You were there for the.
Yeah,
you weren't trying to be part of the podcast scene. You're not friends with all the.
Yeah.
Did you know Michael Brooks?
I was good friends with Michael Brooks. I appeared on the show several times. I was friends with the Chapo guys, and I love all those people. But it did become a scene. It definitely became a scene. There were people there that you were like, okay, like I know you weren't a socialist 3 months ago. Like, like you could just tell. It just became, and even online it became a scene. Like people, I think a lot of people online joined up just to troll. Like it was fun to join in on trolling on whoever the shit lib character of the day was. And in addition to what Pascal said about all the infighting, that turned people off. I think something that turned people off too. I think the first time around, the Bernie bro was this caricature that wasn't true. But the second time around, a lot of people actually became the Bernie Bro caricature. Like there was a little too much trolling of liberals happening that I thought got
but is it like hip hop then in that regard, where this kind of made up person, this made up thug character that's created through the genre isn't necessarily a real person? And here we are in 2024, and hip hop, as one friend coined it when we were watching a video shoot where I used to live in West Oakland, Soundwave Studios. He goes, hip hop today looks like a Living Color skit in 1992. And hip hop is just a characterization of what people think inner city life is. And maybe some people truly embody that. I don't even know anymore, because everybody's pretending to be something so much so that you have to do real things at a certain point. It's kayfabe, right?
Yeah.
With kayfabe, there's two terms that for it to exist: works and shoots. A work is fake. A shoot is real. When those guys are throwing each other around in the ring, they're really hurting each other. Sometimes they're just working. Sometimes someone hurts someone else and you get punched for real. Sometimes people really get the fuck knocked out of them.
Oh yeah, one guy even got paralyzed once, right?
Somebody's died with that stuff. So works and shoots happen with this kayfabe that we see as media. And with what you're talking about, Pascal, and quote unquote left media, I think left media is a cottage industry born out of people that couldn't get into real media, and people that would have made a mixtape years before, or they would have tried out in Hollywood and all this other stuff you could have done. And this was just a quicker way into some sort of notoriety, especially during the Bernie days, because there was so much support from regular people to push up other people that they thought were quote unquote doing something, and doing anything was looked at doing a lot more than you actually were probably doing. Look at all the people that ran for office that before the Elon takeover of Twitter got blue check marks and then got podcasts after their office run failed.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing you bring up when we talk about this media landscape that we live in, because now this media landscape, which I don't think it's going to blow up like it did in 2020.
Yeah, I don't think it will either.
The resistance, quote unquote, is gone, and there's a nihilistic acceptance, if you will. And I think the kayfabe plays out a hell of a lot more, because if we just spent this hour going, you know who I really hate? I hate this person because they say this and they're full of shit and blah, 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 blah. Those shows, even when we say it jokingly, do so much better than the show we did, for example, on austerity. People always go, well, what's the strategy to blah, blah, and blah? Well, we had two really interesting journalists on talking about the largest segment of working class people, which work in logistics, and how companies that we think are retail companies are in essence logistic companies that are not unionized, and how hard it is to unionize these, but just different strategies on where certain sectors. Nobody watched that show because it's not as interesting as me saying, you know what, Katie Halper's got a fat ass. I'd love to see it in a thong. Let that shit go viral. Hopefully my phone doesn't go off of Katie Halper. So you mention my ass one more time. But you know what I mean? Like that's where, sadly, even this small itty bitty corner of the internet that we're in, there's more attention on the gossip than there is the actual journalistic bona fides, if you will.
Yeah. One of the weirdest things I ever got told about Katie Halper was a fan of the show told me that I look like a black male Katie Halper in the face, which is the weirdest
damn
things or whatever. So yeah, look, what does that even mean? That's interesting. I was like,
it means you're a pretty man.
What's that?
It means you're a pretty man.
I don't know. That was a strange one.
I don't even know how to take that.
Yeah, but no, I think you're absolutely right. Like I think the stuff like the austerity show like screens out a lot of the people who are in it for the scene. You know, a lot of people get attracted, but making a scene is where a lot of the money is too. Like to be
Oh,
because
really?
there were a proliferation of live podcast shows. Like when it was at its peak, you know, at the Bell House or different places, there'd be a live podcast show like every week, and they'd be full, you know. And I wonder if that could still happen today. Like I think,
Yeah. Trust me, from doing live shows.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I was gonna say I think the people who were the biggest could still do it, you know, but there were like small podcasts that were
We
even.
did it. No, we did it. You're looking at
Yeah,
two
the
niggas
last
that
show.
did it. I mean, they're not huge rooms, but we packed. I think we sold out that DC show, Pascal.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
We could go back to New York with you, Trevor, right now, and probably play the same room we did in New York, and bring, if not the same amount, a few more. They said it wasn't a sellout because they had standing room, but
Do you remember the name of the place that you guys did in New York?
No, it was in Manhattan.
Was it Manhattan?
We didn't do the Bell House because they wanted a crazy room fee,
Oh wow.
and I'm like, you can eat all the dicks. Do I look like some podcast guy that's never played live music in my life? Get fucked. Oh yeah. So
But yeah, man, no, I think that that scene thing does get helped with the live show in some ways. That it does kind of turn it more into a scene. But I was wondering, what was your experience in that scene, Trevor? Being around the early days of Chapo and
being the black guy in that scene.
being the someone said that you were like the black guy in the Chapo scene.
I mean, it was cool and everything, but I mean, the other thing is too, I'm like a little bit older than everyone in the scene, so it's not like I was really like making it my social world. I'm like married and older. It was but I mean, I literally lived in the middle of that scene, so it's like you see people when you're out, you get invited out, you hang out, and it's pretty cool. But what was weird about it, right, was like I would get recognized places, and it's just like weird to think that you're not actually really famous in any real way, but within this small scene, like I go to bars, I go places, and people would recognize me and talk to me, or people would recognize me in the in Union Square, or you'd be hanging out with people from Chapo, and people will come up in awe to the Chapo guys, and you know, fanboy out. It's just was very strange in that it's a small pond, but it's a pond that could be lucrative, that you could be you know, big fish in. And I feel like it started attracting but this happens with like every scene. Like, you know, people talk about like something like Hate Ashbury, and the end of Hate Ashbury, that people just wanted to show up for the drugs. And that, you know, Hate Ashbury by the end of the hippie era was just full of opportunists. I mean, like, I don't know if it went on if the podcast scene would have had his Charles Manson, you know, someone just a total crazy, you know, opportunist.
I guess it's Jimmy Dore. Is that Jimmy Dore?
Jimmy
Dore. Pascal is Jimmy Dore, the Charles Manson.
The Charles Manson of the podcast scene. Yeah, but that energy, like, is like totally gone. Like I went to a live debate. I went to a live viewing of the Kamala Harris Donald Trump debate in Brooklyn, like in around Bushwick. And the things people were cheering for there, and the way people looked, and the way people were cheering Kamala Harris, and just, you know, cheering things like she was saying that she had like Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney endorsements, and people were cheering, but everyone looked like someone that would have been at a Chapo live show 2 years ago, or a Michael Brooks live show 4 years ago. And I was like, I know a lot of y'all were probably Bernie left us like 4 years ago, and now just kind of went back into the liberal fold. Now that the vacuum is there, I think for a lot of people it was kind of fly by night, but it was weird. Like there was a time where it seemed like it was on the cusp of breaking into becoming the new mainstream face of the Democratic Party. The Justice Democrats were getting candidates over left and right. It's
I remember that 5 minutes of fame.
Yeah. I think a lot of people probably thought that was going to be a meal ticket for them, especially people who couldn't break into traditional media but kind of wanted to.
And I don't even know how many people wanted to break into traditional media, but it seemed like when you saw the numbers for a show like Chapo, and you were like, oh wow, it looks like these people are probably making 6 figures each, and yada yada yada. And I get why a lot of people get into it, but when you get into something like this, much like music, you find out it's not as easy as you think. You can't run the gimmick like you think you can. And generally, if you're doing something fringe, there's no money in it. Some people will make money. Most people will not.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the hard part for people to understand.
And the people who survived the downturn are the people who were either the most talented or the most popular during the peak. But I feel like there's a big washout of like a lot of people on the bottom who were just kind of hopping on just to hop on. Like, okay, it's someone like Crystal Ball. Like Crystal Ball, I think is somebody, she stayed in like the mainstream MSNBC talking space. She would only get so high. Like she was in that space, but if she goes down to the new media space, she can kind of be a big fish in a
massive fish.
Yeah. So there was a lot. It's people like her. I mean, when I say people who, like, she was making it in traditional media, but she would have had a big hill to climb, and we're only gotten so big. And being in that hill breaking points Bernie space, I can see why it'd be way more appealing for people like her.
Look, some people have tried to pivot like that, and you and I were talking about them in the private chat, and can't pivot as big as Crystal Ball for a few different reasons.
Yeah,
but she can make that pivot. Not everybody's going to be able to make that pivot to change. I don't want to say political affiliations, but to get a little less liberal. Just a little. That's all you need to do. Just do a little and hang out in this alternative media space, because people have to remember the Bernie moment for those 8 years, 2016 to 2020, people were very accepting because ideas around what socialism is, what communism is, that's still the fringe side of it.
Yeah.
Because ultimately this is about just the liberal resistance to an idea of an authoritarian failure of American democracy and Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is every villain in an 80s movie. He's the rich guy in the other camp and all those camp movies and shit, or TV shows from back in the day.
I think COVID and the pandemic also played a role, like between like a portion of the Chapo people and other people moving to LA. And I don't know the extent to which LA can support a scene like that, but then also like, what's that?
I said it cannot.
Oh, yeah.
I know Amber and Matt, we've done things together, but it's just a different, LA is such a different beast, and show business.
Yeah.
Look, you guys know this. You go to New York to be important. You go to LA to be famous. Those two things are mutually exclusive. They are very different. And you want to go be important, get your podcast out there and tell everybody you wrote the great fucking novel, you go to New York. You definitely don't do that shit in Los Angeles, unless your novel is some Bret Easton Ellis shit.
Yeah.
About people being pieces of shit. So
that makes sense.
It's LA is way more spread out. The communities are way more segregated because it's so spread out. You have to have a car.
I visited LA a couple of times last year, and something that was interesting I saw about LA. I've never seen a place where people talk about meetings so much. Like people get together and just compare meeting stories, like how many meetings they have this week, who they have meetings with. Yeah, is the person that you met with someone that I've had, like someone's like, I had a meeting with this person. Oh, you had a meeting with them last month. Oh, how did that go? I don't know, but I have nothing meeting with them next month, and I'll tell you then. I was like, that's so interesting. Like,
because that's the latter, right? Like
yeah.
LA is one of those places where you're introduced by your with a resume. So when I was doing music and we got a little more successful, I was introduced by the better tours we had been on. Oh, this is Jay. He just got off tour with Godflesh, and they just did all these shows on the West Coast. And oh, this is Jay. They just wrote about him in MTV. And but I'm still Jay. Like I was just now I got to be this special guy. So people are looking at me on the ladder of importance to see whether or not I'm worthy to talk to. So if my meeting with media company X went well, and I'm like, dude, I just had a meeting with fucking this company, and they're an offshoot of this media company, and they're thinking about giving me some seed money to do. Now you want to talk to me and work for me for free because I could be your ticket to your way in. And that's why I don't dig that city. I love living where I live because I'm so far away from that bullshit. The Bay Area is not like that at all. That's why we never had a hair metal scene in the Bay.
Yeah, and New York doesn't have that many people to meet with. Oddly enough, even though there's like, you know, these big industries, there's so many people you can meet with in LA. So like people that I even knew from Brooklyn who were now in LA, when I talked to them, you know, they'd be meeting with people from all these, you know, from Netflix, from these different things. And in New York, you can't just really easy do that. You could just you can maybe meet with somebody at Random House. That's like about it. You know, like there's not that many.
And that's a minority of people that are going to give a shit about that. But when you go to LA and say you just did blow with the head of Capitol Records, and you know, tomorrow night they're inviting you to a party and you got VIP passes to blah blah blah. Well, that's tell me more. How do I hang out with you more? What are you doing after this? We should exchange numbers. You know what I mean? And New York isn't, not to say that doesn't happen in New York. There's definitely a lot of cocaine being done off various surfaces and people, but you know, the party in Los Angeles is a whole different fucking party. And it really is nothing but a good time until you can't afford it anymore. But to have a scene like, you know, Ben and I always joke, Ben Burgess lives a couple houses down from me. We can't do things in Southern California the way we can do things in New York City because we know more people in New York City. There's podcasters down here that are hella big, but are they going to get out of bed for you if you're doing an event? Are LA people going to get out of bed for you if you're doing an event? New York,
and imagine driving traffic to go there. Whereas New York is just like a quick train ride or take a city bike. You know, you're there.
Oh, it was a whole. It's even the East Coast. We went to DC, and one of the guys that does some background stuff for the show, Quinn, came out to DC to make sure we could get the show could go off and we could live stream it. Quinn is from the Bay but lives in New York. I don't know if Quinn would have made that trip to California because it was a train ride for him from the city to DC. And I appreciate the community that y'all have out there. Everything that we've done in New York has always been a hit. But whenever me and Ben start talking about doing California or Los Angeles, and this is I am a native Californian, we get nervous because we know how hard it is to bring people out here.
Yeah, and with New York, even though like the pandemic killed a lot of that momentum and everything, plus people moving to LA, like even a shadow of the peak that the scene was, I think, you know, can still easily sustain live shows and all this stuff. But yeah, when I was in LA, like LA is a weird place that I really liked it when I was there, but I could see how if you lived there, it could be a very lonely city. Because first of all, there's not a lot of foot traffic. And the places that do have a lot of foot traffic,
they're expensive to live in.
Or are sketch. Either they have foot traffic, but they're very expensive to live in, like Silver Lake or something. Like Silver Lake and Los Feliz was people walking around, but those look pretty expensive. Then there was like the sketchy parts of Hollywood and downtown.
Oh, that's my favorite part.
Yeah, which had people walking around, but it did look pretty sketch.
That's the best part of LA right there, dude. The semi sketchy parts of Hollywood and going to the Rainbow after a show and hanging out. Look, dude, I there's parts of Los Angeles that I truly enjoy visiting as a visitor.
Yeah.
I would love to do a live thing in the Bay Area, since that's home, but I don't know if there's a scene in California like there is a scene in the East Coast. When we did our New York thing, which was at the Cutting House, someone that was there, I believe, let us know, it was at the Cutting House in Manhattan. Hella people showed up. Hella people showed up that we didn't think were going to show up. Sam Cedar was there from the Majority Report.
Oh, nice.
And Emma, and it was fun. It was great. We did the DC thing. Medea Benjamin just kind of showed up randomly from Code Pink to watch us talk about CLR James of all people. I don't know, and I'm not saying we can't. We did something in LA, and it actually went very well. But the nerve-wracking, are we selling enough tickets? Or is anyone going to show up? I don't have that feeling in the East Coast the way I have that feeling back home, because even in the Bay where I'm from, there's just so much going on that isn't podcasty that I wouldn't even know how to go about trying to sell it. And me and Ben are talking about doing something in the Bay in April. But
so you think even in the Bay, like even in Oakland, it would be tough?
It's just not the same kind of community. There's not a lot of podcasts that came out of California with the success of the shows that came out of the East Coast, and mainly because, well, again, what we do is a bit of a cottage industry based off people that did not get mainstream media success. If you look at some of the bigger shows, Breaking Points, Majority Report, these people come out of mainstream media. Sam Cedar comes from Air America.
Yeah,
he's a radio guy. He's been in media for a long time.
And he's somebody who, like, when I talk to Sam Cedar, like, I forget the extent to which he was in like mainstream media, but he'll talk about having a pilot with this person or that person. I'm like, oh yeah, this dude actually had TV shows.
Yeah, DC is where all the media people are. So if you do something in DC, you know, you can call up Ryan Grimm. You can call up, like you said, Crystal and Kyle are down there. Brianna Joy's down there. There's a lot of people that are just chilling in DC because that's where all the media is, quote unquote, important media that we do. Who the fuck is in LA?
Yeah,
you gotta be honest.
Yeah,
you know who's in LA? I'll tell you, Amber's in LA and Matt Christmas in LA. You think they're trying to hurry down to your live podcast?
Felix is down there too, right?
Is he? I'm not sure. I've never seen.
Yeah, I think he's there too.
I haven't seen him, but I can tell you this, and I feel this with certainty. If me, you, and Pascal, and maybe a couple other people from our shows book the same room in Manhattan, or maybe we book a room in Brooklyn, we'll pack it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Easy, easy. Might even be able to do 2 nights. Can you do it anywhere else? Maybe you can do it in Philly. You can definitely do it in DC. After that, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, I feel like in LA. Well, I feel like in LA we look like aliens. Even though we have two, hosts on my show from LA, I think that wouldn't really help. It wouldn't work.
But I'm constantly shocked. I didn't think anyone was going to show up to the LA show. The LA show was full.
Oh, nice. Whereabouts in LA did you have it?
The Tigrum Ballroom, which is downtown LA.
Okay.
I don't know if we could do that same group of people again. It was like Danny Bessner, Anna Kasparian, Nando Vila. That was like 2-3 years ago now. I don't know if those same people would come out, because Nando works in film now, and poor Anna is just getting the business given to her by the online world. So
she's getting a lot of grief these days, which I'm not fully privy to. I just see the headlines and they just make it seem like she's over
there just beating the shit out of niggas left and right.
Some online.
It's some online book. Actually, me and Ben wrote a short book essays on Palestine, and Anna was there, and we did a live thing in LA, really small. He just wanted to do it at a bar with the DSA down there, and they helped put it together, and it was a lot of fun actually. I would love to do more stuff like that, but again, Ben and I live in Mexico, not Los Angeles, which is Los Angeles about 2.5 hour drive north. I wish I'd had the money to just fly to New York, fly Pascal to New York, and we could do stuff, because even trying to do stuff in Florida would be extremely difficult.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what the community is like, because when I go to Miami, I'm the total outsider. So I just go to like Miami Gardens where I have some family, and I go to other parts of Miami, and I have no idea what like a radical scene in Miami looks like, or what the bohemian part. Because I just saw a lot of money. I saw a lot of money and a lot of poverty. At this when I was in Miami, I couldn't really get a sense of where are like the kind of I don't know what you call the social class, but like, overeducated and underpaid, intellectuals. I don't know where those are in Miami. I don't know if there's an area, Pascal, that has
Pascal's house.
Yeah, it's just like a bohemian type spot. I forget, it's Winter. What's it? What's that with a W?
Wynwood?
Wynwood, yeah. Wynwood is where you find most of the kind of bohemian intellectuals. It's a little overrated now, overexpensive, overpriced.
Yeah, because I went to Wynwood like 7 years ago, and it kind of looked like a Brooklyn with palm trees. And I went recently, and it just seemed very much richer than the first time that I went.
Well, look, we've been talking for 3 hours. Thank you very much.
I had a great time. I really enjoyed.
The time went fast, man.
I know.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Trevor had all these things he was ready to talk about, and I think we kind of grazed the tip, if you will, on a few of them.
Great conversation.
Our music.
I can never tell if you're doing that on purpose or if it's just by accident. You do that a lot.
Remember, I come from showbiz. Impeccable timing. This was fun, and I would love in the new year if we could do more of these old black man conversations. This is what every barbershop needs: a bunch of old black people that don't necessarily get their hair cut at the barbershop, but complain a lot in the barbershop. This is what America is right here.
And also, like, you've had me on twice, so it's overdue to have you guys on. So I want to say now, let's if you guys are available, let's do it in January.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, cool.
You have West Coast people on your show that I would. You have LA people on your show, right?
Yeah.
I have to meet the LA people on your show, because LA people have their own language and vocal tonalities.
Yeah, you met one of them that was Vita, but we have Mario is also from LA, and then Kenny's from Portland, but he was born in LA. He knows a lot about LA, but he was actually raised in Portland. So
by the way, there's no black people in Portland. That's why he said he was born in LA, because they didn't even allow niggas there till like 1958.
Yeah, what's interesting is there was and is a black community in Portland, but it's pretty small. It's gotten smaller, but that's there's a show called Hassan Hates Portland, done by it's a web series by some black guys in Portland, and they talk about what it's like being black in Portland. It's pretty interesting.
I keep hearing stories about these Negroes in Portland, and I was like, I've seen the Trailblazers play, and other than that, I just don't know where these black people in Portland live.
Crazy enough, there was apparently used to be like a gang scene in Portland, even, which Kenny could talk to you about if you ever talk to Kenny.
I'll take his word for it. He could tell me anything, and I'll just believe it. But thank you very much, Trevor, for hanging out with us. Pascal Robert, once again, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Oh, also, if you could, email me Pascal's email address. I think I have you and M2 Saints email address. I'm not sure if I have Pascal, but once I get it, I'll send an email to all three of y'all.
Is that for your digital Christmas cards you send it?
Oh no, to invite you on the podcast, but I'll send you a digital Christmas card too if you want. It's all good.
Like you do them with pictures of your family and a dog on it.
Everyone wearing Christmas sweaters.
Everybody wearing Christmas sweaters. They're like, fuck happy ass Trevor and his good life. But thank you, Pascal. I'll see you guys live next year, but you're going to see me in new videos throughout the end of this year. You'll see Pascal in a new video on Christmas. We'll be doing some greatest hits playlists where I'm just going to play for like 7 hours the best shows of the year, some of the best shows with Adolph Reed and Norman Finkelstein. I just found out we can do playlists on here. So I was like, you know what would happen if we just stream for 6-7 hours some of the best shows and people could just sit back and watch them all. So that'll be fun. You'll be surprised to see what were the biggest shows of the year for 2024. I was surprised at some of those shows myself. But we'll be doing that next week. And on that note, it's been a beautiful 2024. I hope everybody has a good holiday, whatever you celebrate. If you celebrate Kwanzaa, I feel like if you watch this show and you celebrate Kwanzaa, you're a spy or a fed. Like that's, you're letting us know you're a fed. Nope, not at all.
Okay, cool.
Good to go. And on that note, should we go out with a little bit of the old school go out? See if we still have it. Oh, we do. Let's go out old school. Peace.